busy with life and
shit. I
took a little hiatus, but
literally it made no sense.
I miss you guys.
And then at the end of all of that, like you were pushing back and
Okay,
shit.
yeah, of course. But I was in the Army. It was don't ask, don't tell.
Yes, you did.
Okay.
Like, like obviously you knew, but we just didn't talk about it.
Yeah.
But like when we were in Iraq, like, I saw this laser jump onto a wall, like right next to my head, and the laser, I could see it moving against the wall, and then it, like, as soon as it disappears and I could see where it was pointing at my head, I hear this motherfucker go, wop, 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 and he killed that dude with the laser that was pointing at my fucking head, and I'm like, I don't care that you're gay, but bro, if you ever need money, I'll suck your dick on fucking paper.
Oh my days, I'm dead. I can't do it.
Bro, I mean, like, if he needs some money, I'll suck his dick on pay-per-view.
Oh, Jesus.
He's the only reason I'm alive besides Jesus.
You are ridiculous.
Well, I mean, welcome to the Army. It's not gay if you don't make eye contact.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of weird right now, because obviously the transgenders are getting kicked out. So, like, I just wonder, like, how
Do you agree with it?
Openly gay, yes. I don't give a fuck if you're gay in the military.
Yeah.
Like, like if Professor was queer as a red door, nobody gives a shit.
Yeah.
Like, but like, as long as he's not coming into work saying, "Hey, did you see that I'm a red door?" I'm like, I don't really give a shit. Like, what color you are. Stop talking about that crap.
Like
it's not professional to your job.
Yes, amen. But why do you feel like? Well, I don't know if this is a personal question, but like, why do you feel like transgender?
Open transgenderism? Yeah, I'll give you a perspective. No. So I think it's harder for them to be in. For one, like, when you're younger in the military and you're not married, you gotta stay in the barracks, right? So, like, a lot of people don't want to share. And it depends on where you're stationed. Some barracks, like the Army, is starting to like accommodate soldiers more now by allowing them to have their own rooms. But there's still barracks that are really old, so where you have 2 or 3 roommates. And so, like, some people don't want to share a room with somebody that they know is transgender because it's just kind of awkward to them. So that's just...
dude, I will whoop that motherfucker's teeth off.
He's so bad.
Well, yeah, kind of a little bit, my lady. Like I said, there's a level of professionalism, but if you're openly, diminishing and demoralizing the moral code for men within the military, like I was a combat arms 2nd Cav combat medic. I was a 68 whiskey. Like the idea that like you're gonna make me deal with somebody that's being Fruity Loops and I've got to protect them.
Okay. I have to.
That doesn't work. That does not work in my head. That does not compute. Reset. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200.
Oh my days. But I can respect the boundaries that you want to create, and
Sailing Girl 69. Oh yeah.
That's all I'm trying to exemplify. Like I said, I don't give a fuck what you
up and realize, shit, it's late. I need to get my son dinner, and I got up and walked without realizing that my foot and my leg were asleep, like halfway up to my knee, and it buckled, and I went flying across the kitchen floor, and I have to wear a boot now, and I have a really, really cool scooter.
You have one of those knee scooters?
Yeah. I zip around in it.
So, did you do ligament damage or break?
Yeah,
Oh my gosh.
major ligament damage.
Did you have surgery, or do you have to have surgery, or is it just supposed to heal?
Not yet. They want to see if it heals. They said it takes. Let's wait 3 weeks and see, and if it doesn't, then we go next steps. But I just thought that was funny. Who does that? Who falls asleep, wakes up, and then their foot's asleep, and then they don't realize that? And
Well, I gotta be careful how long I sit with.
You see, you can be like, there's a limit to smartness, but there's no limit to being dumb.
To the United States and to U.S. citizens from ensuring that that countries are reliant on the United States, and the United States holds essentially power to manipulate trade policy, economic policy, whatever, any policy, right, to our advantage because we backstop the world order.
It seems to be that we're juxtaposing what we would like to be national interest as to what is national interest. Tucker.
I'm gonna stay on mute.
Why are you doing that? Because I got nuts in my mouth.
Jeff, do you still have your voice in the mornings?
Yeah.
You know me
You
too.
never come anymore. Mm-hmm.
I know. I've been gone for like 2 months.
She hasn't been on the app. I asked her that. I said I haven't seen you.
Oh, okay.
I've been
Fair
busy.
enough. Yeah, I went outside to smoke a cigarette with my friend, and like she's talking, I'm trying to light her cigarette because I'm a gentleman, but she's talking and like she keeps putting her cigarette in her mouth, and then she has something else to say, so she takes it out of her mouth, and I can't light her cigarette. So like this went on and on for like, I don't know, 20 seconds, and finally I'm like, will you put it in your goddamn mouth? And she just started laughing because she also has a dirty mind apparently. So, and then she kept laughing, and like 10 minutes later she'd like giggle about it. I'd be like, every time you suck on it, you're gonna think about putting it in your mouth now, aren't you? And she, then I killed her. I think she peed herself a little bit. We found it entertaining.
It says little things, isn't it?
No, I hope not.
It was good.
That's what she. Never mind. I know all night.
Okay, we can keep going on and on about this, Jeff.
Yep.
You know, Joe Biden, Barack Obama had come at an inopportune time for her as well.
So, what hardship are you having in your life that you came back on this godforsaken app?
I think I just missed you guys.
Oh, that's sweet.
I popped in here and there, but I mean, sometimes work's been crazy. Last week, I had multiple days where I had 9-hour, 8-hour Zooms like all day long.
Oh,
The
fuck.
same
That's terrible.
Zoom. Yeah. So between work, personal, like family stuff, family life, it was too much. Yeah. But I thought to myself, I just want to see what everybody's up to. Let me go see. And I missed my friend Kelly here.
There you go.
I'm glad you're back.
There's that voice. I love your PFP.
Thank you. Sorry, I was trying dehydrating cherries and like exploded the dehydrating.
My God, I assumed that you were either doing something with chicken, dehydrating something, or up on a ladder somewhere. It's too late for a Lowe's trip. Straight house.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm just destroying kitchen appliances.
Always fun. But you can fix them though. It's the cool thing about you.
Oh, not these. Not these. All right, I'll be back. I mean, I'm still here, but I'll be able to talk in a minute after I get all the cherries back into the refrigerator.
That's not the leg.
I'll be back in a bit too. If I don't end up seeing everybody again, it was nice seeing you, but I'll try to come back in a second.
Brandon.
No, I thought maybe she was talking about something I was upset about, but I just didn't remember.
Oh no, but well, like we're good on that, right? Like we talked about it.
No, not that. I'm talking about. I thought maybe you were talking about.
I think part of the problem is expecting the United
Chicken
States to say
my God.
fund Ukraine in total. Part of the issue is that we need to have American geostrategic interest. That to me means Lord Palmerston in the 1870s, who said that Great Britain has no permanent friends, only permanent interests. That means the United States does not have permanent friends. That means that we're not the military of the unipolar moment in the 1990s any longer. It also means that we have quite a bit to keep. It also means that we have quite a bit to upkeep. The issue, that the reason I point this out is because in making American military decisions, you can't decide you want to fund Israel and you want to fund Ukraine and then you want to fund China. And the reason I say it this way is because the Joint Chiefs of Staff have designated China our quote nearest peer competitor, which should take us and get us to a place where we're dealing with most of our competition and geostrategic interest as opposed to China. Sorry, Jason.
Wait, so I think I'm not sure I'm completely following you, Marshall, because to be honest, you do sound a little drunk, which could come from sleep deprivation as well. But like the interest of America, like one of the permanent interests of America in Eastern Europe.
Marshall the fuck alone.
I like Marshall.
Marshall Dunk.
Hey, Tudor's fine. Don't even worry about it. Sorry.
Look, I've been sleep deprived too. I get it. One of America's permanent interests in the United States and in Europe is to maintain a strong bloc, right? I mean, it's an economic powerhouse. For as much as we malign it, it is also a military powerhouse. And they have some fundamental weaknesses. One of which is energy, right? And so, like, I don't think the question is like setting a dollar amount. It's like where do you set the defensible line in tandem with your allies? Because no one is saying we should fund it alone, right? I think there's broad political consensus that the Europeans should fund their part, and what that part is up for debate. But like, they do contribute to Ukraine specifically, to NATO. Defense around the world in various ways. And that is not that hasn't changed. And it's not exclusive to our interests in Asia and our partnerships with Japan and Australia and Korea, right, and other countries in the region to counter China. Like, we can do both at once. We should be relying on our partners to help us with that. And there is no set dollar amount for that. Right, you need to have strong red lines, strong gray lines too, to keep your adversaries from expanding and undermining your influence and your power.
And by saying keeping your adversaries from expanding, who do you mean exactly?
I mean, in this context, particularly Russia.
And when exactly did Russia try to expand? Would you please clarify?
You mean when they invaded Ukraine? Or, I mean, what are we
Do you ask for the military action about Russia because they didn't, stop from the 1980s after the ZSRR collapse? USSR, I don't know how to English, but Soviet Union collapse because they making military moves on all of the world. So yeah, but from in the Ukrainian, it's from the 2014.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna really sit here and deal with someone who's saying that the war in Ukraine is the fault of Ukrainian aggression or U.S. aggression. Like, that's kind of
it's the kind of
propaganda. You can go do that in other rooms.
Yeah, the Russia is not making a break, even though it would be a true from the propaganda that some Ukrainians will be lying in regions, there will be a conflict with others. But even though we would give them the territory, it will, stay calm for the 4 years in this area and then come back to, for example, Litva or like we say it in Poland, the war will be in the 3 years if something not changed. But the Russia is making the military moves all over the world. For example, in Africa, in Syria. In Europe, for sometimes in Georgia, Gruzini, Chechnya, in some, it's a Russian imperialism, and if you would like to learn about it, in my region, it was so much,
So to be fair, the Chechen wars were within their territories, so they were trying to quench the rebellion within. Georgia, you're absolutely correct. And to add to this, they would be meddling in European Union politics in specific countries. Like they've been trying to do this apply this pressure through gas prices on Germany, France, like basically the Baltic states, you know, the North Europe. That's part of their strategy. They've been trying to meddle into the West more so than the West was trying to meddle into.
I mean, we were talking about the expansion. I'm not here just like to defend anyone, but talking of expansion, right? I mean, when Secretary of State James Baker back in the day tells the guy in Moscow, Gorbachev, explicitly that if Germany would you mind let me speak, please? Excuse me, would you mind let me speak, please?
Listen,
I just wanted to say something and I haven't finished it. And you want to interrupt for no reason. What's this? What's this? Andre, I haven't even finished.
Eli,
what
it's going to be like a chess game.
What is it that you want? I haven't even finished. What are you commenting on right now?
You know
what are you interrupting for right now?
You're just repeating the same stuff.
I'm not repeating anything. You need to let me
Andre's such a bitch. Andre's such a bitch.
When people are talking, you don't have to be so goddamn intellectually secure.
Yes, you need to. I was speaking and I was in.
I don't give a fuck. Shut the fuck up when other people talk. Sometimes we have a purpose for interrupting your dumbass because you have a way of conducting yourselves in conversations as if you're just reading off a bunch of dumbass bullet points that you pulled out of your ass.
Damn! Man, I'm packing it up, and we're packing it up, and we're packing it up.
I'm Canadian in my room right now.
And we're packing it up, packing it up.
You want to come over here and square up with me? You could do that. But this dumbass is acting like nobody in Canada wants to be a part of America when there's a whole ass fucking movement of a minority of Canadians who want precisely that. And this dumbass doesn't understand that the United States has one of the most prolific militaries in all of the world, in all of world history, rather. But he's going all the way back to fucking 1777 to say the first time y'all tried to invade Canada, y'all failed, to prove, like, what, Canada's better than the U.S.? The fuck out of here. Like, dumb shit like that is going to get your ass gooed and or talk shit about. Because I can't stand dumbass niggas who pretend like they know shit when they don't. It's annoying.
Wow. Project the project. Project the project.
Fuck up and take the L, bro.
Project the project. Project the project. Project the project.
Andre, maybe you can answer my question. So can you provide like one sentence summary of your position?
What we've talked about, yeah. So there was
not 1 inch to the east promise, like. I'm just curious.
Yes. And I was still really interested in why you took
Hey, shut the fuck up. Thank you.
So the pushback, the most concise pushback is that those promises were made to Soviet Union, the country that ceased to exist after the fall of the Soviet Union. They were made to a leader of the country that stopped existing. He was not the leader of any country any longer. And secondly, it was basically words that were concerned with the division of Eastern and Western Germany. It had nothing to do really with what happened after, because the figures on the chessboard changed drastically after that. And all the countries that were part of the Eastern Bloc ran as fast as they could in the open arms of NATO, because they dealt with Russia prior. They knew history, of the expansionist continental mindset that Russia has had and looks like will have in the foreseeable future. And so there's, I don't think there's any, weight to those promises.
So you mean you deny that those promises were made, or I mean, I don't quite understand.
No, they were not. They had absolutely no legal binding, and they were just basically backroom, talk. They have.
I mean, verbal contracts are binding in the state of New York. What are you talking about? When people between two regulars, between two people, what are you talking about? There's global politics in question. You kick people out of the stage. You think that you're making Bible points by interrupting people. What are you talking about?
He's such a bitch. Andrew's such a bitch. He's such a fucking bitch. He's always bitching.
I confirm that. As someone knowing history, I confirm that Andre is correct. Those were not legally binding obligations for sure. But nevertheless, the way it was read, actually, it was captured, and recently in the European Parliament, the actual notes from this meeting were presented, and it was said that if you basically allow Eastern Germany to join NATO, there will be not a 1 inch expansion to the east. And I know, again, it is not legally binding, but as a matter of the fact, that's the reason why people in Russia have mistrust of the West. And I think and the question still remains, like at that time when these obligations were made, I mean, those promises were made, right? Russia de facto was considered to be a Western friend. There was great hope. There was Gorbachev, then it was Yeltsin. Both were considered very much pro-Western, democratic and whatnot. And it was long before Putin. So my question is, what kind of a rationale, given again that we have two very pro-Western democratic leaders, would you provide to justify expansion of NATO to the east?
Well, I mean, I would just say that NATO's vector and focus have not changed at that time. So it was still, NATO's purpose was still to provide a counter to Soviet Union and Eastern Bloc countries at the time. When the Soviet Union fell and the Cold War was won by the United States and the Western countries, the focus shifted to China. So Russia was not any longer considered, the target. So NATO coming closer to its borders had absolutely no strategic, advantage or danger to Russia. In fact, Russia, if I remember correctly, provided a base during the Afghan invasion of the United States in early 2000.
Can I say something?
No, you may not speak.
Yeah, I think it's maybe the China focus on the wait a minute. To the more of the product way of the gospodark way, but Russia, especially in Poland, in this Eastern Bloc, was always the target. So I think so maybe it was not so popular, but Russia was target from the military, even though after the war, because they. Even though they don't making a war with you, they still trying to mess some things. For example, giving the propaganda, making the US weaker, making the EU weaker, building some connections. So from the military way, I thought that maybe in the politics of global politics, it was the Russia as a military, but the China was as the ground country, because the US had the they ruled the world peace, but now because of the factories in the China, the connection between BRICS like Russia, India, China, and others, they losing the power that they used to have after the war, or after the in the 90s.
Yeah, just to be clear, Russia and China are not friends. Neither are India and China. I mean, they might be.
It's not the friends, but if you would like
to useful allies. I got you, but I just wanted to clarify. Maybe not for you, just for others. I'm not challenging your point. I'm just saying that those countries are not friends.
You know what? I don't like that guy, Andre. Fucking get rid of him. He's fine.
The same spotlight. In replacing U.S. hegemony. They're not willing to share power with each other. That's why one of the reasons why BRICS kind of fell apart, because they had completely different visions and they saw themselves as the head of this organization.
Yeah, even though the BRICS will fall, it don't change that the grown of the West propaganda, sources will grow. In my opinion, we somehow stay at the place when the other countries still develop. There's no so high. So even though the BRICS will not go out, they also can be, the danger. They can have a more of influence than it was. So yeah.
I just hold on a second. I'm a little confused as to what you mean. Would you mind being a tad more specific?
Yeah, I would like, but it's not my first languages. If I would talk in my first languages, maybe I would be more specific. But
I don't expect you to pronounce things right. I just thought if you can communicate the idea, that would be wonderful.
Fantastic.
okay, I just want to say that
Fantastic.
the Russia and the China are concrete with the US for so much years, and they make so much progress, and it's not like the America don't rule the world, but it's somehow lose the influence about some things that they used to have.
The only reason China developed is because West invested $1 trillion in its economy. I would like to add something about the NATO, so-called NATO expansion. It's not NATO expansion. NATO doesn't occupy any country. Countries join NATO voluntarily, right? And even Finland, which during the Cold War never joined NATO, they joined NATO because they're afraid of Russia. So, Vadim, you are doing the classic victim blaming thing. You're blaming.
I was asking questions. I mean, I did not blame anybody. I mean, that's like you totally tried to put me like into some propaganda.
I'm not propaganda.
I was asking genuine questions. That's all.
Okay,
I'm saying.
I'm
I asked
answering
Andrei
it.
what he thought about expanding NATO to the east and how that play along with the actually written, like at least documented promise not to. That's all.
So hold on.
I never said the expansion of NATO is the
The
thing.
both of you chill out. There is a source posted at the top of the page from the Declassified National Security Archive per George Washington University. You can look at it, peruse it, see it for its effect, and look at it. But folks need to be able to cite their sources if they're going to make declarative statements about scholarship.
I never claimed that there is no difference between conquering somebody and joining as a member. Okay, I mean,
I didn't say you were. What I said specifically was those who are engaging need to engage at the highest levels of scholarship. That means backing up what you say, which you've already done. And so it really doesn't apply to you. It applies to the other people who are not following directions.
Vadim, I want to continue. You probably speak Russian, so you can find the interview with Vladimir Putin, probably dated 2001, where he's discussing the desire of Russia to join NATO. And Russia was in talks with NATO about joining NATO, but it did not go well because Russia wanted a special place in NATO. So
I'm well aware of that. I'm just not sure about relevance, but that's.
There is even NATO base in Russia in a place called Ulyanovsk. It was done to help the NATO to supply the troops which were in Afghanistan by that time. So all those Russian fears of NATO fails. It was the pretense to invade Ukraine. So I think you can stop talking about it. It's just a false statement about the Gorbachev talks. The binding agreement is Budapest agreements, right? When United States, Britain, Great Britain, and probably France, I don't remember, they promised the Ukraine security warranties in exchange of Ukraine giving up their nuclear weapons. This is the binding.
Romsha, I was the one who started my question by acknowledging that it was a non-binding agreement. My question was purely like, what do you think on like human level about that promise not being fulfilled? That's all. So again, you tried to put me some kind of like make me some kind of Putin propagandist, which I'm not. You know, speaking of China, I'd like to comment. I mean, somebody said that Russia and China. Well, the irony of it is that Russia and China were not in particularly good terms even a few years ago, but the sanctions and the stance taken by the Western powers actually brought China and Russia as close to each other as never. And that's just unfortunate. That means that probably there's some thinking to be done because Russia and China being in cahoots is not in our best interests.
Hold on, did everybody just leave? Just step out for a second.
Yeah, Andre, I think they found out that you're a flat earther. Andre hung out in the flat earther on me last night for like 3 hours, so he's officially a flat earther.
Oh, God. Maybe we can do like a round of last thoughts.
I would like to add about China. China has no friends historically. They do not make friends or allies. China considers itself as a center of the universe, or whatever the word is. So, BRICS, China and India are adversaries. They are enemies. They have a territorial dispute. And so, hoping that China one day will help Russia and unite with Russia against the West, it's just Russian propaganda. China has its own interests and never will do anything to help. Just compare the trade between China and West and between China and Russia. Trade with Russia is about slightly more than 100 billion, and the trade with the West is just about $1 trillion.
Some wisdom, thank you.
I mean, China and India had also, had their own troubles. China basically stabbed India in the back with the whole Tibet deal, and there's also territorial disputes there. So that's why, I mean, in my opinion, the whole idea of BRICS is like it's very shaky. At least 3 biggest players, or 3 out of 5 biggest players, they all have issues with each other, so there's never going to be coherent vision. Anyway, any last thoughts, Hakim, Vadim?
No, I don't have nothing to
I
add.
dropped the link to this archives. Thank you very much, because when I try to speak, people don't tend to believe, and they think that it's just picking up some stuff from Wikipedia. But this is a very clear article. It says that Baker, only James Baker himself mentioned not an inch to the west, not once, but 3 times. And that's in addition to other assurances, some of them in writing. Again, I agree that none of them are binding legally speaking, but all of them have like a really bad smell. I mean, you can't deny it, I think.
I mean, the issue, once again, like as I pointed out, the issue is that the country that all of those promises were given to and would be relevant to does not exist any longer. So they are not a strategic enemy anymore, or were not until fairly recently, let's say.
Well, Andre, it's, with all due respect, it's, I don't think it's a genuine argument, and this is why. There was the Soviet Union, right? Then 3 republics decided to separate, go their own way. which has cascading effect of other republics splitting up and basically the Soviet Union ceasing to exist. But then the major and the only nuclear power that remained was now called Russian Federation, which essentially was still Moscow, Kremlin, all the all the military infrastructure, all the industrial infrastructure. Essentially, it was the descendant of the Soviet Union. I mean, that was the if anybody was gonna fight the wars against, East against West, it was probably the NATO against the Russian Federation. So Russian Federation de facto became successor of the Soviet Union. So yeah, I can say that, I promised it to the Soviet Union, but I don't think it's particularly genuine and frankly noble way to retort.
I mean, I don't really care about nobility. Genuine, it's very genuine. And if you remember the post-Soviet period, specifically when Russia was very West-oriented, like in the 90s, the wild 90s, as they say, they were looking to get through that stage of, chaotic economic policies in order to get over the hump and enter the free market system and, overhaul their system fairly quickly. So there's absolutely... If you were saying that they were politically, the argument that you're providing has several weak spots. If they in fact were the continuation of the Soviet Union, then everything that has happened afterwards is absolutely justified. In fact, I would say the West should have pressed even harder, took away the nuclear weapons from Russia, and broke it down into many more smaller entities, political entities. Because if the dream of the Soviet Union has never died, rather than being resurrected by Putin, once again fairly recently, then West is completely justified on pressing NATO not only to its borders, but breaking it up even more so. So
you
can't basically bake the cake and eat it too. Like it's either Russia has taken on certain infrastructural things from the Soviet Union, inherited some of its debts, but also assets elsewhere, but changed politically, then there's absolutely no problem with NATO expanding to its borders, and it actually participated in many treaties with NATO. But if it's still, harboring the dream of the imperial Soviets, then, I see absolutely no problem with NATO.
How is it logical, Andrea, to say that they're still harboring the dreams of the Soviet Empire if they deliberately, voluntarily dissolved it?
Once again, it was your argument. I'm just taking your argument and just running with it. You're saying that the Russia is continuation of Soviet Union, right? That's what you're saying.
Geographically, in terms of infrastructure and military, I never said that it's a continuation of Soviet Union politically.
Okay, then there should be absolutely no issue with NATO expanding to its borders, because the new Russia, the new entity that was inherited the debts but the assets as well, has nothing to do with the political entity Soviet Union. So it shouldn't have the same kind of fears.
Andrea, do you believe if somebody disowns its communist past, it necessarily means that they should immediately, by default, become the copycat of the Western democracy, or they should have the right to choose their unique way, path of development, which...
I don't think there should be a copycat, but they definitely should not be some sort of a permutation of the Soviet regime or any sort of socialist or communist regime. If they are, then I think West is completely justified in hammering them.
I just found too many ifs in your argument, unfortunately.
I don't have any ifs. I'm just running with what you're presenting me, and it makes absolutely no...
I'm just saying that Russia, admittedly, by the West, was going their own way. They definitely were departing from their communist past, and that they made it very clear. And the West and the Western media did not really question it. They loved Gorbachev, they loved Yeltsin, and yet, at the moment of economic weakness, because Russia did go through a lot of turmoil, it was like total, chaos and etc. But nevertheless, they were very much pro-Western. And that very moment, the NATO goes through the most dramatic expansion in years. And I'm just saying, for me, that's a question. I mean, I put a question mark here. I'm not providing any answers, but for me, it does not seem logical. And you're saying if Russia is still the same and they still harbor in those dreams, if then NATO is justified, and if on the other hand, NATO is totally, Russia is totally democratic now, then they have nothing to worry about. But I mean, this is a very formal argument because de facto what happens is that Russia is still a sovereign country and they see that the bloc, the military bloc that was created explicitly as a military bloc aiming against Russia or against the Soviet Union, whatever, now it's called Russian Federation, is expanding towards their borders.
Okay, let me just pause right there. Okay, so what you just said, this is why your argument makes absolutely no sense, because you keep switching back and forth between Russia being the geopolitical, just geographically inheriting the Soviet Union and all its assets and debts, or it is politically the continuation of the same entity. It can't be both, because if you are correct and Russia continues being the geopolitical enemy of the United States, even post-Soviet
for the United States, yes.
Period. So you are claiming that it's still a geopolitical enemy of the United States by Russian admission.
No, that's not what I said at all. I said the actions of NATO indicates as if they view Russia as their enemy.
No,
Russia
false.
did not feel this way.
False. That's false. So it's false on several levels, because in the 90s, all the countries that were within the CIS and Russia specifically were part of the treaties with NATO. The NATO explicitly made its new target China, and Russia was actually was looked at as instrumental in creating a counterbalance to China. The big switch. There's another hole in your in the way you're presenting your argument. The switch happened not after 90s, not after Yeltsin and after Putin came to power. Putin was still fairly welcome to the table when he became, inherited the presidency, because he when we found out he didn't actually win it. He was just given the presidency by Yeltsin, and then he just consolidated the power and kind of manipulated the system. Until I think 2008, post-2008, this is when things started shifting, because Russia did not show any goodwill towards the West. While West was, pumping money, resources, and welcoming it to the table, to the negotiation table, and looking at it as a partner against China, Russia had its own plans. Some of the things that Putin even said publicly, like, the greatest tragedy of the 20th century is the dissolution of the Soviet Union, all those things. So it seemed that, the West was played, basically. They made a huge miscalculation when they were analyzing Russia and its cultural paradigm. Russians are not like the Western countries. They have completely different understanding and different way they lead their politics, and they have different aspirations. So as Bush said, "Fool me once."
Andrei, actually, as a matter of the fact, I agree with you. I thought I said that Russia does have unique way, or at least a unique mentality, which kind of drives them in a very particular direction, which I personally never particularly liked. That's why I'm no longer there. But again, does that mean specifically that if they're different from the West, they have to be viewed as a hostile power?
I mean, I don't think so, and I don't think West did that. But Russia made its mission to become the hegemony, countering the United States.
Well, Andrea, let's look at the timeline roughly. So 1999, right? Poland, Hungary, Czech Republic. 2004, Bulgaria, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Romania, Slovakia, Slovenia. 2009, Albania, Croatia. And then 2017, Montenegro. That's kind of, if you look at the timeline, lots of this time is like when the West officially considered Russia still very friendly, albeit weak for sure. And I think that's, it's a very plausible theory to say that they were not acting in goodwill. And then when they saw Russia friendly yet weak, they basically presided over a very dramatic NATO expansion.
No, they saw Russia in bombing the Chechnya, right? That's what the first reason for them to join NATO.
Romsha, it was a breakaway republic within the geographical borders of the country.
It doesn't matter.
This was essentially a terrorist republic because their methods there. Yeah, I mean that's what would America do? What would Europe do if somebody inside tried to break away in violation of every law? This is their territory. Like at least I can give you some credit if you start criticizing Russia for their actions in Georgia and Ukraine, Crimea, whatever. But Chechen Republic, it was their territory for centuries.
So what about Donbass in this case? Did Ukraine have the right?
I'm saying for that I would give you some credibility for this claims, as I just said. At least you can make the case that this is like Ukrainian territory, and so bombing the sovereign state is not a good idea. But if somebody well within your geographical borders employs the tactics of terrorism to break away and declare itself a sovereign state.
Okay, I understood your point. The fear doesn't care about the laws, about Chechnya, was it lawful or legal or not. They saw Russia as a threat. Russia stopped being peaceful country, and they remembered their past, their history, and they became afraid. And that's why they joined NATO. Wait, I don't interrupt you. Why do you keep interrupting me every time? I would like to go back. NATO was not against the Soviet Union. It was Soviet Union against the West. Let me remind you, don't interrupt you, please. I have to remind you that the Soviet Union, before collapsing, had 220 nuclear-powered submarines and 60,000 tanks. NATO had 40,000 tanks more than the whole world combined. So tell me, which is aggressive power and which is defensive?
Romsha.
And yeah.
If you know history, I hope you do, you realize that Warsaw Pact was created years and years later after the NATO was created. And the NATO's specific goal was stated as follows: to counter the communist threat to the rest of Western Europe.
Yeah, I remember.
Which I think was a legitimate goal, but I'm just saying that NATO was created. My only point was, again, I'm not a big fan. I hate, Putin. I hate the communism for sure, but I'm just saying I also happen to know history. And so I know that NATO was perceived by Russians for a very legitimate reason as the military alliance aiming against USSR and then just inherently
okay, let's talk about history.
Against the Russian Federation. So expansion, what I'm saying is that if you look at the actual timeline of the most dramatic NATO expansion, it was in the years when Russia officially, by the media of the United States and Europe, was considered to be a friendly, democratic, or at least aiming to become democratic, completely breaking away from their communist past. And I'm just saying, what was the reason for the expansion?
Okay. Let's talk about Soviet expansion. It was China. They occupied half of the Europe, Eastern Europe, right? They backed up the Korean War and so on. They, what is the proper word for that? They blocked the Western Berlin, and Western countries had to make an aerial bridge or whatever. Stop interrupting you. I don't interrupt you. Why are you doing this? After 10 words I say, you start talking again. What's the point? If believe me, I can interrupt much better than you. And if we start doing the conversation, then
Romsha, I'll control it. I'll make sure he doesn't interrupt.
Okay. Vadim, the NATO was created because after the Second World War, Soviet Union became a superpower and he started to expand. First, they made China communist country, then the Korean War, and so on. And do you remember the global revolution thesis of Soviet Union? They formally left it, but it was always about expanding the communists to the whole world. So they backed up every country which declared that they are anti-American, anti-West, and so on. And this is the reason why NATO was created. It was, and while the Soviet Union built up the military production of assault weapons like tanks, like nuclear submarines, the NATO was mainly producing the defensive weapons like anti-tank weapon. When I was a Soviet kid, I read the Зарубежное обозрение, so-called military magazine, and there were a lot of. It was always about the Western weapons, and you could read the article and see versus, namely NATO, meaning Europe, are making defensive weapons like automatic anti-tank ambush rocket launchers and so on. The Soviet Union was an expensive and aggressive state. And this is why NATO was created, because people were afraid of Soviet Union and had all the reasons to do that. So stop swapping the things.
Rumsha, it's kind of ironic because I first started by saying that America had a very good reason to create a NATO to counter the communist threat. I quoted literally their charter, and I said I'm not a big fan of communism or Putin for that matter. Again, I just have to repeat my question. I mean, the times when it was very clear that Russia departed from their communist past, why on that time of all the possible times in history, the NATO went through the most dramatic expansion. When again, it was not even questioned by the West that, Russians are our best friends now.
I already answered that question. It was not NATO expansion. They did not say, oh, Finland, join us. Sweden, join us. The Finland and Sweden did it voluntarily. They applied for membership. It was not NATO expanding. You are making false statements.
No, I'm not. I'm
Yes,
also the one to admit that I understand very well. I'm an intelligent person. I understand the difference between joining the membership club and actually conquering the territory and whatnot. I understand that, but still, when some country applies, there is a collective wisdom of the existing members. They can say, "Hey, look, maybe it's not necessary because you poke the bear. You're really positioning yourself right on the border of the country that recently was hostile to us, and there is some level of let me finish now, okay, please.
Oh, good. Now you don't like being interrupted.
So, there is some level of historical mistrust, and so probably, hey, you Finland and Lithuania, Litva, or whatever, maybe, how about we provide you security guarantees and you become this neutral buffer country so that we can have a reasonable peaceful arrangements with Russia, and then the future will show. Maybe Russia will one day prove their worthiness to join the NATO. But why to poke the bear? Why literally because NATO membership literally means two things. First is you can totally put the missiles on their territory with 10-minute flight time to Moscow or St. Petersburg. And the second thing, it means that there's not a darn thing Russia can do about it, because now there's Charter 5 and everybody has to defend them if Russia attacks. So it's a big threat.
No.
I mean,
nuclear power will destroy the whole world. Russia has nothing to fear.
Oh,
they have nukes.
Please.
Yes, please. Tell me, whoever tried to invade Russia
I can
after
give
the
you
Second
another
War,
example.
maybe China?
I can give you another example if you want a piece of history.
Wait. You were talking, I was not interrupting you, and you are interrupting me again. Do it again, and you will not be able to talk.
I thought you asked the question.
Okay.
No,
Let's stop this. No matter. Okay, we established, please don't interrupt each other, just let each other finish.
Vadim, you will understand when I finished. Okay, you called Russia a bear, right? The king of the forest. Russia has nothing to be afraid. And like after the First World War, all the Western, the Great Britain, the France, all of those countries did not want to go to war. And nobody wants to go to war with Russia. Everybody knows it's not a good idea. And nobody, this is old Soviet propaganda, like they want us, our resources, they want to make us slaves. I don't know how old you are, but I am 52. And I sick and tired of this old Soviet propaganda. And the West has no propaganda because, for example, United States has no state-owned mass media, except for the Voice of America and what was the second? And the Voice of America, by the law, cannot broadcast on Americans. It's like CIA. There are two different types of propaganda. There is agitation, like telling the truth, and propaganda. It's a Soviet type of propaganda when all the other sources of information are banned, and there is only one opinion of the Soviet government, and it is spreading lies.
Can I speak now?
Yes.
So I don't know again who you're arguing with, because again, I think I'm repeating like the third time or fourth time that I hate the Soviet Union, everything connected to it. I had a very specific question about a very particular time of history, which you totally ignored. But anyway, so you're saying that Russia, quote unquote, has nothing to worry about. Then how do you explain? And of course, Russia has propaganda in the Western world, no, which I find ironic because you talk to Americans, and I am an American, and it'll be like, any claim that the West does not have propaganda will be met by Americans with laughter, really. But let me give you some piece of history. So in the 60s, right, when Russia, the Soviet Union back then, decided to place a few nukes on Cuba. And again, I can repeat the same argument that you just provided, that of course nobody's gonna, it's like a deterrent, nobody can seriously consider using it ever. And by that time, mind you, Russia was completely encircled by nukes, and the last straw was like when America actually placed nuke in addition to Western Europe. They placed it in Turkey. Then Russia said, enough is enough. How about we place, as a deterrent, just a few missiles in Cuba? And Russia and America basically said, you know what, it's not going to happen. And in order to prevent it, if it takes a third world war, so be it, we're ready. And they started actually making plans, and by sheer miracle, the Third World War was prevented. So that's American response. They could, if they listened to you, they would say, hey, come on, we cannot be serious. Russia, the Soviet Union would never actually use those missiles. It just, just chill it. Who cares? It's 20-minute flight from, between Cuba and Florida, but seriously, we cannot take it seriously. It's not going to happen. Yet America had a very, very different reaction. So when you say that, when you dismiss Russian concerns, you can think whatever you want about Russia, but then I have to ask the mirror question, what about the response of America?
Okay. You claim you're an American. Good. And you are defending the Russians' point. And I'm a Russian. And when you were talking sometime about that Russians distrust the West, it was a lie. It was Putin's propaganda. Russians do trust West even more than, they don't trust Putin. So it's very ironic for me, being Russian, to defend the opinion of the West, right? And you are saying you are American.
I'm an American, and I love this country very much.
Yeah, and you are apparently of Russian descent. I'm sure about that. So in Russia, we say you can take someone away from the Mukhafransk, but you cannot take Mukhafransk
Okay, let's do
from people.
no insults, please.
It's not insult. It's the point that a lot of Russian immigrants continue
How about
to
you actually
support.
provide some arguments for change, okay?
For change, we can agree that you stop interrupting me. Because you were talking for a long time and I was...
This is meta conversation. Just get to the point, please. Because I would like also to address what Vadim is saying. Because I don't agree with that.
Leon is American citizen too, and he says at the time Mudak for defending the American point of view. Interesting. I think Vadim, when he became an American citizen, and Leon, when he became an American citizen, he pledged an allegiance to American state. Right?
Flag in the Republic at this point.
Yeah. And now they say offending me because I'm a pro-Western. Very interesting.
Because you provided not a single argument from.
Okay, cool. So, Vadim, this is the reason why your argument doesn't make sense. At least to me. When NATO was organized by your admission, it was organized against the communist expansion and preventing Western countries being targeted by the communist and socialist expansion. If Russia maintained to be, after the breakdown of Soviet Union, communist or socialist country, then its fears are justified. If it hasn't, then those fears are made up. Because if it changed its vector, then it has nothing to fear. And as I think was explicitly mentioned by NATO, I have to look it up in terms of documentation, but they did point to China as being their primary target instead of, like since the Soviet Union dissolved its.
Andrei, I think, I hear you. I think this argument is winding down, and here's why. I can only repeat at this point that, for me, I'm a live witness of what was happening back then, right? So I know that Russia definitely partied with communist past, and every single leader was saying that communism is completely unsustainable, and the reason why it was disbanded is because the economy didn't work, and they expected much far worse consequences if they did not have perestroika and whatnot. So it doesn't mean again that they were ready to become Western countries, but they definitely, knowing Russia, I would say we had such a burdened history that there was no way Russia could become a Western country. But there was also no doubt in my mind that they could never possibly go back to their communist past, just because, again, it's not practical, it doesn't work, it's proved not to be working. But again, Russia created something, you can argue that it's something ugly. It has definitely lots of similarities with Russian past centuries ago, which is absolute monarchy, just a more modernized way. But frankly, we have lots of friends, absolute monarchs. We Saudi Arabia is one of our best buddies, and so again, being parting from the communist past. And I would like to add something towards the expansion. See, the irony of this is as follows. There was one person called Leon Trotsky, which is the darling of many communists from the West, ironically. That was actually the person whose works I read in the original, who basically claimed that in order to survive, communism has to expand. It's just the nature of communism is that it cannot just be self-sustaining within confined boundaries. It has to conquer the world or it's doomed to fail. And so Trotsky basically had lots of disputes with Lenin and Stalin was the one who said, this is nonsense. We are concerned with building socialism in one country and one country only. And he consistently followed this line, and that's why Trotsky ended up, being expelled from the Soviet Union and ultimately assassinated. So any claims that Russians for some reason have always been expansionists are historically incorrect. Now, what happened after the Second World War was, again, very clearly, very well documented. It was not because we particularly wanted to expand, but it was the opportunistic situation where basically, hey, we just lost 40 million of our people, and we happened to, since our goal was to reach Berlin, all the way to Berlin, and hey, we, by the way, in the process of doing so, we conquered a few countries on Eastern Europe. So why wouldn't turn them into socialists? Because basically the communist propaganda of back then, which goes all the way to Marx, basically says that capitalism and the war are always bound together. I mean, in order for capitalism to exist, it needs imperialist wars. So the official propaganda was that if you want to secure Russia from the future wars, you cannot you cannot have neighbors which are capitalist countries. So, again, it's a very screwy logic, but it's logic nevertheless. They wanted to turn them into socialist countries in order to secure their future. This whole thing about expansionist Russia is like such a shallow narrative that I know it's promoted by, and the last thing I'm about to finish, like Romsha, to your point, yes, I'm a good patriot of the United States. I've been here for 35 years. And this is my country. Like you can wake me up at night and say, what's your motherland? And I would say, of course, America, my America, okay? But the way we understand loyalty in America, and that was very different from what I experienced in Russia, was that if you're a true citizen, you really have to speak your conscience, and that means that sometimes you have to criticize America for things, for the past wrongs, for the current wrongs. You have to be critical, in other words, for the sole purpose, like you speak out of love and desire to improve it, So I see no contradiction here. I love my country, but I also, if I honestly believe that they did something wrong in the past, they provoked something that they didn't have to provoke, I just speak out. But, if you want me to tell what I find good in America and why I spent like 35 years with no regrets living here, I cannot even think of going back. Like I've been to my hometown once in 35 years.
I understand your point. You don't have to say the same things for half an hour.
Okay, I'm finished, and that was not longer than...
Just very quickly, Vadim, if you are going to bring up Trotsky into the discussion, and you're going to talk about the differences between his and Stalin's vision of the Soviet Union, do you by any chance remember when Trotsky was killed?
Yeah, he was killed in, I don't remember when exactly, but in Mexico by Stalin's agents, yeah.
Yeah, in 1940. So up to that point, I think it's socialism in one country policies were from like roughly mid-20s until Trotsky's death, like up to Trotsky's death, 39. After that, Stalin changed his policies drastically, and it became expansionist policies. Because the idea was to build up the fat before you can start spending it elsewhere. The internet so now has never left the Marxist vector of the Leninist, Stalinist vision of the future. So don't you find it highly probable that the switch has happened because Stalin didn't have to create counter to Trotsky, who was his ideological nemesis and who he neutralized like he did with all the other people? Because Stalin allied himself with different parties, with right socialists, left socialists, depending on who he wanted to neutralize. And once he became the only leader, by eliminating his biggest nemesis, Trotsky, he had nothing else to hide, and the policy became very obviously expansionist.
I respect and appreciate your knowledge of it. It's like very good to hear, actually. Here's my take on it. So basically,
wait. May I answer your long?
I'm responding.
No,
Yeah,
you were talking about that you are a patriot, and this kind of argument I love most of all. They say the expression like "I'm a patriot, but" is translated as everything said before "but" is a lie.
I never said "but."
Yes, you said.
I said does not prevent.
I'm an American patriot under that, but.
I said, but the way Americans understand patriotism.
No, you didn't say it.
It's very different from the way patriotism traditionally was understood by the Soviet Union.
I'm an American patriot, but I have to blah blah blah.
So what's the contradiction here? What's the contradiction here? Show me the contradiction.
No contradiction. No contradiction. You just saying it. You are repeating the standard Soviet propaganda, which I got sick and tired during the Soviet time. Stop interrupting me. Come on. How many times do I have to ask? And all those things that Soviet Union is a peaceful, we are fighting for the peace in the whole world and so on. I got sick and tired of it even during
Romsha, I literally never said that. What kind of nonsense?
It.
But you're lying. I never said that. I said the opposite. I said the opposite.
I'm making my point already. I'm not saying that you said that. I'm saying that I sick and tired of these things in the Soviet Union. Try to listen for a change to people. So I'm very surprised that we have to go through all that Soviet bullshit in the 21st century, more than 30 years later, after the Soviet Union got out of existence. And for me, listening to all this bullshit, which was debunked even during the Soviet times, and saying that you are a patriot of the United States, come on, man, get serious.
Romsha,
I'm watching Soviet television again when I listen to you.
I'm not watching Russian television.
Sorry, just one sentence. You probably speak Russian, so I posted a link to Putin interview about NATO, that Russia wants to join NATO. You can watch it and...
I did, can you imagine?
Good.
So, I mean, I think, Romsha, you know what projection means, hopefully, right? I think you're projecting. I mean, I so many times distanced myself from the communist Russia, from the Soviet Union. If you want more details, I was like pretty much anti-communist all my life. I left the Soviet Union for a purely ideological reason, not because of for better life and greener pastures. And I still remain the one. But again, yes, here comes my but. I mean, the way Americans understand patriotism is like you have to have the objective look. You have to stay informed, objective. You have to criticize your government if needed because you love the country, you want it to be better. So I just don't see any contradiction here.
You are not criticizing your government. You are praising Russia and Soviet Union. These are different things. Yes, you did. You do it all the time.
I asked a simple question. I asked a simple question.
Again. And that
what was the reason for expansion?
No expansion. NATO is not expanding. Countries join it. Expansion is when Russia invades Ukraine and declares the Ukrainian territories Russian. This is an expansion.
In English-speaking world, I'm sorry, it's called expansion.
No.
I'm just using the right term, I'm sorry.
No.
Probably not your native language.
No.
It's kind of mine right now after 35 years.
So when Sweden and Finland joined NATO, it was NATO expansion?
It's called expansion in English literature.
I don't care what it is called. Was it an expansion of NATO? Was it a NATO initiative or whatever it's called?
When something ends up being encompassing the larger territory, it's de facto as a matter of English language. It's called expansion. But if you're talking about specific mechanisms, whether or not it was a result of conquest, I repeated God knows so many times that it was not a conquest. It was totally free choice of countries. I agreed with that. I don't know, how many times do you need me to repeat that, really?
Yeah, you can repeat Soviet lies many times. I heard all of it during the Soviet
What kind of lie did I just... Have I just said a lie?
Yes.
I said that I agree that
you were claiming that NATO was a threat to against Soviet Union. No,
I said
Soviet
the NATO
Union
was created with explicit purpose, which is in their charter, as Andre confirmed actually, to counter the threat of communist expansion in Europe.
Yes,
and
they were defending. They were afraid of Soviet Union, and the same applies to the current situation.
And good for them. They were right. I was the one to say, and they were absolutely right, quote unquote.
So,
I never said that the NATO didn't make any sense. I said it made perfect sense I'm totally against the expansion. I think it was very unfortunate that we ended up with Warsaw Pact and all these Eastern European countries being under the dictatorship. I'm totally against it.
Good.
You know, I was appalled by what happened to Czechoslovakia and Hungary and whatnot. And that's why I hated the guts of this regime. I'm just saying, but then when finally this regime collapsed, to my greatest joy, and at that very moment when Russia and Russians were so open to the West, and they expected to be really embraced like as a new country, and instead of that they saw the expansion. I'm just saying it's very unfortunate that was the seeds of future mistrust.
The expansion was at the end of the 90s, and Soviet Union collapsed in 1991. You are mixing things.
What am I missing?
Like making it look like it was happening at the same time. Stop doing it.
I never said such thing. I mean, again, you're projecting.
Yes, you said Soviet Union collapsed, Russia became an open country, and instead of embracing them, they began to expand. It was a false. You are making it look like it was happening at the same time, but it was not.
Hello. I'm just listening, and sorry if I'm interrupting, but it's really interesting to hear the Russian perspective, because it's hard to understand what's propaganda, what's not. I'll tell you, my dad lived in the USSR. He was a soldier trained there, actually, from Somalia. So he speaks Russian to this day. So I've been following this. And I did see the link you posted, Ramsha, of Putin saying that they wanted to join NATO. So I think what's hard to understand is what is Russian propaganda and what is forgive me, like real, like I don't know, it's really hard to understand, but I appreciate hearing both of your perspectives. Thank you.
You see, the Russian view of, for example, nation is different from the view of the West, and the same applies to the propaganda. During the Cold War, the Soviet Union, Soviet people listened to their radios, trying to listen to the Voice of America. What was the European? Whatever, and they even were arrested for that. And for a very long time in Russia, trying to leave the country without the permission of the Soviet country was a capital offense. You would be shot to death. This is how happy we were. And propaganda is when you have the only source of information, and it is official, the communist government and so on. They are spreading lies. They are not telling you the truth. They are saying that the West is against us and so on. This is what propaganda is. It's spreading lies. When you say it's good to eat healthy food, to exercise and so on, it's not propaganda. It's agitation. You are trying to convince people to do things like this. There are two types of propaganda. And propaganda, it's all about lies and blocking all the other sources of information. This is the Soviet type of propaganda. And when we are saying that West has propaganda, no, they don't, because they have Fox News and they have CNN, they have different sources of information, and they have all the they have everything to make up their own opinion. And in the Soviet Union, we had no chance to make up, to get our opinion.
Ramsha, you know, you can't even imagine how many Americans would be like amazed to hear your point of view, because it's such a common point. We Americans say that, you know, we have lots of propaganda. Now, we have different types of propaganda. That's correct. CNN and Fox News are telling very different things. But there's just general consensus among the American public that both basically do propaganda because they try to present a one-sided view of the story. And I mean, that's such a trivial, I mean, I'm surprised I need to explain this to you. I mean, propaganda is like it's permeating any society, democratic or autocratic or whatever. Of course we do have propaganda. We have lots of it.
No, it's a modern fashion, like calling everything you don't like a fascism or whatever. It's not the proper words, proper terms. Propaganda has a definition.
Propaganda is presented one side of the story. So, for instance, when Hitler was not in majority, he did not.
Come on, guy. Once again, you interrupt me. I have not finished yet. When Americans say CNN propaganda, Fox News propaganda, it's labeling. It's not. They are not using the proper definition of propaganda. I'm talking about the classical, scientific, if you want, definition of propaganda. And according to that definition, like people today, when couple guys are killed, they say it's genocide. No, it's not genocide. Genocide has scientific definition, and it applies to propaganda as well. So stop making up things. Propaganda is the Soviet propaganda when they were only. It was not one-sided story. It was false story. They were telling lies.
Okay, can I interject quickly, please?
Yes, I finished.
Okay, the definition. Listen, everybody. Propaganda is biased or misleading information used to promote a particular political cause, ideology, or point of view. It is often designed to influence public opinion and behavior by appealing to emotions rather than presenting objective facts. It's exactly what every single American TV network does. So, you don't really know what you're talking about.
Yes, I know what I'm talking about, because you have to compare it to Russian propaganda and you will see the difference.
I'm not trying to compare which propaganda is good or which propaganda is bad. I'm just saying propaganda is permeating life of any society.
You are trying to make up things. You are calling propaganda the things which are not propaganda.
I just provided you the definition. You just earlier said that let's stick to the definition.
No.
Yes, it's definition. It's
you are talking about opinions. CNN and Fox News can broadcast the same information, but stop interrupting me. I will switch off my microphone and you will talk next. So when CNN is highlighting some event, they give also sometimes give also an opinion. And actually, in Western journalism, it's a rule to provide two opinions on the same point. For example, if there is a war between Ukraine and Russia, you have to provide the opinion of Ukraine and of Russia. This is the rule in Western journalism. In Russia, it's a different story. They have only one opinion, which is controlled by the government, and this is propaganda. And you are trying to promote the Russian, one of the Russians' propaganda that everybody is the same, that West does the same shit as. You want to interrupt me again? Please switch off your microphone. Come on. One of the main agenda of Russian propaganda is we are not bad. The West is also bad. We are just to be equal. By the way, it was what Hitler did during in League of Nations. He said, we are ready to perform disarmament. We are a peaceful country now. We want to give up our weapons, but we want the rest of the countries to do the same. This is all tricks. the Putin's propaganda is so lazy they don't even want or able to make new tricks. Come on, man.
Okay, can I respond now?
No, you cannot respond. Yes, you can. I switched off my microphone.
Okay,
if you
so
ask such a question,
first
then
of all,
you have to.
Romsha, if you are trying to tell me that there is a difference between Russian propaganda and Western propaganda, I would not even argue, because if I thought they are all the same, I would probably stay in Russia, because it's kind of, I got used to living there like a long time ago. But what I'm saying is that you're right that we have free journalism in the West. So therefore, if say one TV channel presents, or TV network to be precise, presents, say, the Democratic point of view, then there's another TV channel like Fox News that presents the Republican point of view, and nobody's going to jail them for sure, yeah. But propaganda, by definition, I don't know, maybe you're uncomfortable with it, means that within particular, say, CNN Network has no obligation whatsoever to present the Republican point of view, and they don't. Similarly, Fox News has no obligation whatsoever to present, like they all say, we're balanced and fair. That's their cornerstone phrase, right? That both say the same thing. But none of them are balanced or fair because they present the point of view of the party they're aligned with. And in that sense, you say that at the scale of the society, you can say, yeah, there is a possibility for educated citizens to hear different opinions, and you're correct, and that's a fundamental difference from Russia. But if you're talking about, by definition, propaganda, this particular network, I can say that CNN does propaganda, Fox News does different kind of propaganda, and I'm blessed that I can go to both and compare and see which one makes more sense. Yeah, and that's a fundamental difference from living in Russia. But I'm saying propaganda is nevertheless. And I don't think we should really spend, it's such a minutia, what are we talking about? Okay, you don't like to call it propaganda. Okay, I will not argue with you. Okay, you're right.
I know the correct answer. Okay. CNN or Fox News cannot be called Western or American propaganda, right?
Sorry, could you repeat it, please?
When I'm talking about mass media in Russia, I can call them Russian propaganda, because they broadcast the same opinion defined by the Russian government. Am I correct?
Correct.
So tell me, if CNN or Fox News are American or Western propaganda in similar?
Okay, no. I mean, yes, they definitely. Okay, let me finish at least. Let me answer. I promise to be one question, one sentence. So they don't provide, say, Western propaganda specifically, but however, I can say that CNN traditionally and very consistently provides liberal propaganda, whereas Fox News provides conservative propaganda.
So you did not answer my question. So I'll rephrase it. Name me mass media which are spreading Western or American propaganda.
Probably none.
Good. This is my point.
But but I just said that, yeah, they don't. Neither Fox News nor CNN provide specifically Western propaganda, but they provide specifically propaganda. You can slice and dice propaganda in many different directions. So there's a liberal propaganda, there's a conservative propaganda, there is Western propaganda, there is Eastern propaganda, there is American propaganda, there's anti-American propaganda. You can slice and dice any way you want, but it's still propaganda, because propaganda by definition, again, means biased or misleading information used to promote a particular political cause, ideology, or point of view. That's it. That's all it takes to call something propaganda. I mean, again, you're not comfortable with that? Fine. I'm not going to argue with you about the definitions. You don't like this definition? Let's talk about something else.
Okay, so we came to a conclusion that there is no such thing as American propaganda, as I stated before, because stop interrupting me. Please.
I literally said nothing. What's wrong with
you? You switched the microphone on.
These guys are funny, right?
From the bottom of my heart, Romsha, you told that you're a translator. I don't understand why your English is.
Because for 25 years I was only doing written translation.
Got it.
From English to Russia. And I told it to you several times already.
Already?
For the several years we know each other.
From the bottom of your heart. Okay.
I know English better than I do Japanese, but I speak Japanese better than English because I worked as a Japanese interpreter, and in case of English language for 20 years, I literally translated only automotive manuals, like workshop manuals, owner's manuals, and so on. And in Russia, we say he's like a dog. He understands everything, but cannot say a word. So my English is kind of dog English. I understand everything, and I barely speak. And my accent is horrible, but it's okay. And it's okay. Yeah, please.
Oh, no worries. No, you guys are so funny. But the thing is, Rumshed, the hilarious part is you realize that America is getting Russian propaganda. You don't notice this? Isn't that the funniest thing?
Vadim is not influenced by the Russian propaganda. He is Russian propaganda. He's from the Soviet Union, and he is on the side of Russia, but he's an American citizen.
It's really mind-boggling. I mean, Romsha, let me summarize it. In the past, 30 minutes, I said that I was a staunch opponent or enemy of the communist state. I left the Soviet Union for purely ideological reasons. I hated it. I still do. In the course of discussion, the only thing where I really deviated from the traditional, Western view of the things was I simply asked a single question. The rest was pure assumptions on Rumsh's side. I asked a simple question, which is how come that at the moment when the Soviet Union ceased to exist, and admittedly by the Western standards, it was very much democratic, etc., how come that roughly at the same timeline, the data went through most dramatic expansion? And that question alone allows people like Romsha to accuse me of being a Soviet propaganda mouthpiece, again, contrary to every single statement I made. I condemned Russia and the Soviet Union God knows how many times. I expressed my own personal hate of this regime God knows how many times, but just merely asking one question which doesn't fit your narrative is enough for you to totally imagine some stupid stories about me being a Russian propagandist and not being American enough, for God's sake. And God knows how many times I said how much I loved my country, the United States of America, and hate everything related to communism and Putin, etc. And you still think that just because I asked this one single question, it literally nullifies all my statements. You really take 0.1% of what I said and make this swiping generalization. How dumb is that?
Well, first of all,
we're gonna check how American you are. What's the true name of the Gulf of Mexico?
Gulf of Mexico, still.
Come on. Jesus Christ. Guys, you have to sense of humor.
Again,
I'm just trying to make a
I
joke.
just think it's a dumb idea to rename it.
First of all, I joined the conversation. I joined the conversation just 30 minutes ago, and I have no idea what you were talking about before I joined the conversation, right? So.
Romsha, I'm a perfect example of anti-communism.
I did not finish.
It is just a dramatic pause. It's not a finish.
No, I saw a microphone switching on and did not want to say a usual thing about stop interrupting me. And you interrupted me, finally.
I'm sorry for interrupting.
I'm not talking to you.
Sorry.
It's okay for you to interrupt, Sergey.
So, Vadim, the whole argument about NATO expansion is one of the main pretenses of Russia for invading Ukraine. And you keep raising this thesis, but it was answered so many times that there is no Andrei answered you about Gorbachev and so-called promise of not expanding the NATO and so on. But you keep asking this question and you keep raising this argument. So I don't know what else to tell you because you are spreading. I'm not judging you by the words you are saying. You can tell that you are American patriot and you love American country how many times you want, but once you are continuing to spread the Russian lies and Russian propaganda, you will not convince me that you are an American patriot.
Can I ask you one question?
How can I spread anything by simply asking? I mean, this is such a contradictory idea. I mean,
you are not asking, you are promoting this.
No, I'm asking the question. I'm waiting for an answer that would satisfy me. Okay.
Yeah.
That's all.
This is one of my favorite takes of Russian Kremlin bots. They say, I'm asking a question and you did not satisfy, your answer doesn't satisfy me. Yeah, it's a very common takes of Russian guys from the bot farm.
Romsha, do you know how many Americans, in fact, the majority of Americans I know, still questioning the Vietnam War?
Yes.
Are you saying they're not patriots? They're saying they're like sellouts of the communist regime in Vietnam? I mean, this is such a bullshit argument, Frank.
Yeah, and
there's such thing as consciousness. I mean, my consciousness wants this answer that would make me comfortable with.
Okay.
So Vadim, sorry, Romsha.
Just one sentence.
Okay.
Vadim, you have no physical ability to know the opinion of majority of Americans. You said the majority of Americans I know.
Okay.
I know. Yeah, that's very specific qualifier, right?
Yeah, he doesn't know anything. That's more. So Vadim, but Vadim, I'm just being totally straight. So let's just. The reason why I push back in the manner I have because your presentation doesn't have an internal consistency. Like if the purpose of the NATO is to counter the communist regimes or any kind of authoritarian regimes, anything that's not an authoritarian regime does not really, you wouldn't expect any fear from that entity. So if Russia stayed an authoritarian country, if it was harboring the same type of pro-communist or pro-socialist or similar type of, outlook and views and wanted to achieve the same type of goals, then yes, the fear is justified. But if it wasn't, then the fear is not justified. It's a pretense for something else.
So, Andrea, I mean, I heard you. So let me try to kind of approach it from the different angle. So imagine that you were the enemy of somebody, right? And then you decided this is a ridiculous thing. You tried to break a peace, right? And probably that requires that you both go through some kind of internal transformation. Your attitude has changed and you try to, but you don't really know. You're not a mind reader. So you don't really know what awaits for you. And so you try to make first kind of small steps and you watch closely for the response. I mean, Russia back then in the 90s, they didn't know. They knew that there is no way they're going to be communists, but they knew that, the whole stand up against the West didn't make much sense. They knew it was all counterproductive. But what they did not know yet, and I'm a live witness of it, they did not know what the hell they're going to do with it. They were still deciding, they were experimenting. Some experiments were frankly stupid and disastrous for Russia, and they went through lots of turmoil and, lots of disastrous things that they did not know. So, like, what you were saying is correct and very analytical, dry, cerebral level, but, like, it totally does not account for human psychology, okay? They were waiting, like they were saying, okay, we're making our baby steps. Here's your Eastern Germany. Here's like your Warsaw Pact, which is no more. Like, okay, so what's your next step? And don't ask us what we're going to be. We don't know. I mean, we're looking at Yeltsin and we seen that he's basically has a very twisted idea of the Wild West. He thinks that he starts to privatize like crazy and there's mass, like people go totally like broke. And there's devaluation of the ruble and people suddenly become poor and they have this mixed like they have mixed opinions. Like, do we really want to become a capitalist country? Well, probably we should try, because socialism purely doesn't work. But is it going to be pure capitalism or something else? Maybe something like some hybrid? Who knows? But in any way, we just want to be different.
Okay, good.
And we want to be friends with the West. And and what you're saying is like very cerebral. Okay, are you democratic or not? Well, maybe there's something in between, but they're no longer what they know for sure. They don't want to be a Western enemy. That's it.
Okay.
That was a very dominating mood.
So I'm just gonna quickly tell you, like, with what you said, what it looks like from where I'm sitting, and then Sergey, you go. To me, what it looks like, the West came after the Cold War and said, okay, Russia, you lost, yes, you inherited all of those things, and, like the assets and the debts and stuff, and so we're allowing that to happen. Everything is transferred to you. We don't want the nuclear weapons to go around the world, so we're going to, work together, contain them. We're going to take them away from the countries that might not be as stable as you, like, Ukraine was at the time, and Kazakhstan and Belarus. So we're going to work with you. There's going to be a new step forward in our relationships. We're going to give you resources. We're going to show you how, and we're going to give you technology, and step by step, perhaps you're going to become part of our paradigm. Our new target is China. So Russia basically played the West because for the time being, it looked like as if Russia was aligned with the West, it was allowing NATO to fly through its territory, had even a base. There's some treaties with NATO, everything is good, except Russia never wanted to be part of the West because it did not accept the paradigm where you don't take the territory back. And that can be seen, Chechnya, West kind of looked the other way, allowed Russia to do whatever they wanted there because it was aligned with, the overall fight against terrorism. And there was a lot of people who were, crossing over in terms of enemies of the West and enemies of Russia. But then Georgia happened. And that was the first, big wake-up call, I think, for the West to say, wait a second, they never changed their way. They claim that they're going to be aligned with us in terms of their, what they want to be or how they want to act. But in reality, what they want, they just were biding their time until they could put themselves in a position, like what they did in Europe and, the energy agreements with Europe and Ukraine, that they can start influencing the European politics. They crawled into, the world economic system. And so now they're going to be trying to influence and take over from within. And this is where I would say it's 2008, 2009, where the relationships start breaking down. And this is where Russia starts making its moves, political moves in Ukraine, political moves in Germany, political moves in France, and former countries of the Eastern Bloc. And so there's obvious reaction against it. And this is when the narrative about the NATO expansion starts appearing more and more often as a talking point. But once again, it lacks the internal consistency, because if Russia truly has changed its way and turned away from its communist past, they had nothing to worry about. However, if it was still trying to go in the same direction and just saw itself as a continuation of the same type of policies, politics, and expansionist views, then absolutely. But then the Western expansion of NATO would be completely justified because they are still fighting the same old terrible enemy.
So again, Andrei, you present, in my view, a false dichotomy. You said that either Russia becomes exactly what West wants it to be, or the West must conclude that Russia basically is the same old, multi-head, dragon which just wants to swallow the West. And I'm just saying, this is false dichotomy. Russia becomes something different.
If it did, it had nothing to worry about.
Because there is
you can't have it both ways. So if NATO's purpose, no, you can't, because NATO's purpose is to fight communism and communist and expression of totalitarian regimes. If Russia is not a totalitarian regime and it's anti-communist, then it has nothing to worry about. If it still is, well, then West is justified to do what it did.
I just want to add something. Russia was not afraid of NATO till the 2014, until the invasion into the Ukraine. And the best proof of it, NATO base on the Russian territory, Ulyanovsk. How can you make an agreement to create a NATO base in country if you think that NATO is an enemy? Basically, it's about military planes being able to fly into Russian territory, which is forbidden by all the international laws, and they can bring a lot of troops and attack Russia within.
Romshi, you ironically just proved my point. Actually, Russia did not view America as an enemy. That's why we actually helped, with invasion to Afghanistan after 9/11. We provided our bases and whatnot, and Russia did not want to see America as an enemy. Just kind of ironically confirmed my point.
Vadim, you still don't see that the reaction to NATO's expansion is unjustified if, in fact, Russia changed its way. If, in fact, so West is a partner, not an enemy.
Well, Andrei,
as soon as it's making a claim that NATO is expanding and there's some sort of fear towards Russia, it immediately puts itself in the position of, regime that is opposed to the very, basic principles of the countries that compose NATO. If that's so, then the NATO expansion is just.
So, Andrei, again, I think we're going in circles. I think, I kind of ran out of arguments. I can only say that I can point you at least at two very competent, in my view, American observers who, who have been around for a while.
Please don't say Jeffrey Sachs. Please don't say Jeffrey Sachs.
No, okay. I'm just saying that there is another opinion, which is saying that Russia did change. Russia definitely parted from its communist past, but they wanted to be something else, which was not like they clearly did not want to be the arch enemy of the West anymore. But at the same time, they wanted to morph into something that West did not like. But that's something they want to morph into was not clearly with explicit stated goal was to be friends with the West. So yes, you're right. Russia proved that they did not want to be like this traditional run-of-the-mill democratic state, guilty as charged, but they wanted to become something which is not communist, which no longer has expansion goals, and which wants to be friends with America. And who can blame them for this? We have lots of countries, we the United States, we're very much friendly with, and they're not democratic.
Okay, so the last...
We acknowledge their unique ways. What was wrong with acknowledging Russia's own unique way? I mean, and they did not want to play second role. Yeah, they did still wanted to be the leaders, the world leaders, and they want to assert themselves as world leaders.
Okay, great. So I would love to hear from Ragnar and Sergey, I think, who came off the mic. So I'm just going to say this last thing to you. But yes, I agree with you that they went their own quote-unquote special way. The last 2 points that you made are moot because they did have expansionist intentions, as shown by their politics in Europe, their incursion into Georgia, their politics and policies with Armenia and Azerbaijan, what they did in Ukraine, how they meddled into politics of all the Eastern Bloc countries. So that point is moot. And the second one is that they wanted to be friends with the West. That's also, makes no sense. Because if they did, that the NATO would present no danger to them. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. But right.
They wanted to be friends with the West, but they thought, again, I'll be very careful in my phrase. They thought they had the evidence that it was not mutual, that the West did not want to become friends with them. And that was the problem.
Well, then it's very annoying. Right, good.
Okay, I mean, I guess, yeah.
So
I hear that's what you're thinking, clearly, yeah. But I just think, and exactly that's what I may think, but I'm just saying, as the witness of this event, I can say that I believe I'm correct saying that this is how Russia felt. And I think it's very unfortunate that, you may call it miscommunication or overreaction, but again, Russia felt that they made enough goodwill steps towards the West, not democratization. I grant it to you. Russia probably will never be democratic. I mean, they burned with like thousands of years of history of total totalitarianism, but again, they wanted to be something different. Okay, and they thought that they made enough steps of goodwill to expect that America would just relax and say, hey, you gave us your award.
So Vadim, we're belaboring the point. So yeah, and my push would be that they did not make any of those concessions or moves towards becoming more like the West or like being complementary to the West because of their obvious expansionist tendencies. But let's hear what Greg, because
I think that it's clear that Russia is an autocratic dictatorship with expansionist tendencies. And what must be remembered is that the expansion of NATO in the 1990s was an organic expansion that happened at the request of the states who joined NATO. And if you look back at there was internal debate in NATO. I was enlisted at the time. I wasn't an officer yet, but I remember there was internal debate in the NATO countries whether they should expand or not, whether they should allow these people in. But the Eastern European countries were clamoring to get in because they expected Russia to resume its expansionist habits that had been, the hallmark of its existence from before the time of communism. So, what we've seen in the last 10, 15 years justifies their desire to join NATO. And what we can also hang our hat on is that, remember the 1997 joint U.S.-Russia protocols, not U.S., NATO-Russia protocols in the Founding Act that was passed and signed by both Russia and NATO that actually allowed for expansion of NATO and established procedures for expanding NATO into allowing other countries going into NATO with no objection from Russia noted at all. So it just goes to prove, I think, Andrei's point that this idea that Russia was always against NATO expansion is a rewriting of history by the current regime to paint a certain type of picture. But in the 90s, it was not that clear. And it wasn't until 2008 is probably about right. It wasn't until 2008, 2009 until this propaganda narrative began to emerge. So, and I'll use the word propaganda. I know there was a debate about what propaganda is. I was actually an information operations officer in the United States Marine Corps. So I created propaganda. Basically, it's an ideological communication using various mediums to reach your target audiences. Is what propaganda is. The word was originated with the Catholic Church in the 1600s, with the ministry to propagate the faith. That's simply where it comes from. Now it morphed, of course, and was used by totalitarian regimes. But that was the origin of that term.
Hey, Raggers, I want to ask you a question if I can. Do you believe in the propaganda that you actually created for Marine Corps? Do you actually, it's ideological. So do you personally subscribe to the same ideology? So what I mean is you honestly believe the propaganda that you put out is something you believe in?
I did, yes, because it was anti-Mujahideen propaganda. It was anti-terrorist propaganda in Iraq and Afghanistan. So, they're more mortal enemies. So yes, that was definitely on our side against them. We didn't have to publish false information because they're dastardly enough that they gave us all the ammunition we needed to simply communicate how egregious they were. So it wasn't hard to propagandize in favor of the West against Islamic terrorism.
Have you ever tried to do the same thing, but against another adversary that is perhaps not so, blatant or, evil in that?
I didn't, because my time as an information operations officer was 04, 03, really. I helped create the program in the Marine Corps, and I did it till about 2012. So, that's what we were busy doing at the time. So I was not involved. I did run a war game, countering Chinese war game, but I was out of the propaganda business by then. But I suppose we could turn to China at this point, but wasn't personally involved in anti-Chinese propaganda.
So, Ragged, thank you so much for bringing this up. Actually, I remember hearing about the 1997 agreement, but I didn't know the depth of it, and actually that it touched on the question of NATO expansion. I just kind of skimmed through it and found those interesting spots, and you're absolutely right.
It explicitly created procedures for expansion of NATO, and Russia signed off on it.
That's right. So, the talking point of any kind of verbal reassurance is trumped by the actual documentation and legal bounding documentation which allowed NATO expansion.
Yes, I think
they was willing.
And
as you said, how did you put it? It was natural expansion or organic expansion?
It was organic expansion, driven by the countries who were trying to obtain NATO membership. There was actually some debate on the side of the West between the major NATO powers, Germany and France and the UK and the US, on whether we should let them in. That's documented. And eventually they did decide to establish procedures for expanding.
Yeah, I'm going to post that founding act of the NATO-Russian cooperation where NATO is allowed to expand to other countries, and Russia apparently has no problem with it. Yeah, I'll find it and post it.
I remember when it came out. I was already a Marine Corps officer by then. I remember when it came out. We all had to read.
I just did a quick search, and I would be really curious on that link because my search shows that Russia never formally agreed to NATO expansion, but there were diplomatic discussions and understanding of the issue. And so, and then blah, blah, blah. Of course, 1990s, some people like Mikhail Gorbachev thought that the Western expand. In other words, I guess the TLDR here would be there was no formal legally binding agreement where Russia officially acknowledged. But there was actually documentation indicating Russia formally objected to it. So I agree. It's not binding like CM.
There was no such agreement. There was no such agreement. It was only Andrea also explained it. Sorry, Rich. Because they were talking about Eastern Germany only.
We moved
to the 1989 conversation
to a different document. Okay, so there's a 1997. Yeah, I just posted it up there.
Yeah, what they're referring to is
mutual agreement between NATO and Russia signed in Paris in 1997, May 27th.
Right, what Gorbachev refers to is an informal conversation between himself and James Baker in 1989, end of 1989, early 1990, in which Baker said that they didn't have any designs. And he was talking about the Bush administration and himself at that moment, not that the United States never, or the NATO would never expand ever. He just mentioning that they didn't currently have any designs to expand. And it was just an informal, it was like a cocktail conversation, so it doesn't carry any weight. A signed mutual agreement between the two parties carries much more weight. And if you look at the Founding Act, if I can just finish, the Founding Act also was accompanied by protocols that were an addendum to the Founding Act that actually had explicit procedures for expanding NATO membership. And Russia saw all that and never objected to a word.
So, Ragged, I agree with you that, I actually, you joined recently, so I started by saying that I acknowledge there was never legally binding agreement that NATO will not expand, but just to be historically correct, it was much more than cocktail conversation Baker mentioned it at least 3 times on different occasions, and there's other American officials that say that they see no problem. They see that the NATO expansion to the east would be unwise and blah, blah, blah. I mean, there's like multiple assurances, but that's okay. I agree that nothing is legally binding. You know, I just
people miss the point of in this discussion because people focused on whether there was any formal or informal agreement between the West and Russia about not expand NATO. I think that misses the point because whatever you agree in the 90s or early 2000s, right, it's not going to bind, whether it's legal or not, it's not going to bind forever on NATO side or on Russia's side. I think the real question is, has Russia objected to the inclusion of Ukraine into NATO or EU strongly enough and signaled that they will resort to use of force if it takes place? And I believe before 2014 and even after that, Russia has on many occasions done that. And the West insists on the eastward expansion of NATO despite the Russian objection. Now, this is why when Russia wages such a war, this is to be expected.
Clarifying question. So, are you claiming that prior to 2014, Ukraine was on track of joining NATO?
Okay. I think so. Yes, I think in the Romanian.
Okay, so that's false. That's a false.
But that does not matter. That's precisely my point. I think they did.
A lot because
I don't think it matters.
And here's, no, hold on, Russia, stop. Here's why it matters a lot. Because the whole narrative that Russia is spinning is contingent on their claim that Ukraine the whole time was trying to join NATO. And they were, the aggression of 2014 was in response to Ukraine's actions, which is false. Which has absolutely
I don't think that's false. The
which
mentioning of inclusion of Ukraine into NATO was as early as 2008.
I'm going to finish speaking and then you can speak. This is how this works. So what has happened is there was an intent that was officially voiced by a couple of officials, one of whom was the president of Ukraine at the time, had very little support, popular support. And when he saw that he had absolutely no support from the population, he didn't even ask for the appropriate, mandatory application for the NATO. So that was kind of, that was tried out. The public opinion was tested, had absolutely no support, and then they moved on. Now, Russia claimed as if Ukraine was on its way of becoming a NATO member, and the aggression of 2014 was the response to it. That narrative is.
That's not false because it was the United States who were actually opening the invitation to Ukraine, even during Bush's time. And this is talking.
How is that in response to anything that I said? It doesn't
this means that the West have intended to expand NATO towards Russia to include.
I'm going to finish clarifying and I'm going to go into it. So the claim was that Russia responded to Ukraine attempting to join NATO. Ukraine did not attempt to join NATO because it didn't even ask for the application, the mandatory application. So the narrative that Russia spins is incorrect. It doesn't matter which country was trying to push Ukraine into NATO, whether it was France, Germany, Great Britain, or United States. The fact is that Ukraine never even received an application.
Yeah, again, I don't think that matters. First of all, it was the West that is pushing eastward expansion of NATO, not Ukraine. And secondly, it was clear that Ukraine has undergone through a overthrowing of the government into a pro-West direction. And
there was no overthrowing of the government. It was a popular.
Well, you can call it whatever, but it is
Give us the link for that invitation to NATO.
It's very important what we call it because the terms matter, the words do matter, and there was no installment of any kind of government by any entity from the outset. It was a popular uprising.
Andrea, let me clarify something because, you mentioned historical accuracy. So, yes, NATO is in the picture, but specifically for Crimea, Russia made very specific claims. Number one, they say that they want to annex Crimea because ethnic Russians and Russian speakers in Crimea were at risk after Ukraine's 2014 Euromaidan revolution, which overthrew pro-Russian President Yanukovych, right? So that was claim number one. Claim number two, referendum and self-determination. Russia pointed to a controversial, quote unquote, because that's how Western media covered, referendum held at Crimea in 2014 where 97% of voters supposedly supported joining Russia. That's number two. Number three, historical claims. Russian officials, including Putin, argued that Crimea, which is correct, actually, historically is correct, has been historically part of Russia before Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev transferred it to Ukraine in 1954 as a result of totally undemocratic process with no referendum whatsoever, which is historically correct too. You can even find confirmation of that in politically neutral sources like Wikipedia. And finally, illegitimacy of Ukrainian government and strategic and security interests like Black Sea, Russia's Black Sea Fleet in Sevastopol. Like NATO ambitions were never mentioned. Like it's a top 5. NATO is not.
Okay, so let's take those claims. I mean, let's take the interesting ones because like the whole historical narrative for Khrushchev's gifting. That's neither here nor there. Yeah. So question. So do you agree with the Russian position of the Russian Federation that the people in Crimea were under some sort of threat of violence or were actually experiencing some sort of violence?
I cannot say to that. I will not lie. Like I said, I'm not a Russian propaganda mouthpiece. I long left Russia after.
I'm not asking you whether you're a mouthpiece or not. I'm just asking your opinion. Do you think that those people were under threat or were physically?
There was a wonderful American documentary called Ukraine on Fire, which specifically covers Euromaidan.
Yeah, I would not hold I don't think that was his name. The guy who did.
So judging.
Yeah, I don't think that his point of view, which is explicitly pro totalitarian regimes, is very valid. Here, I'm asking your opinion. Do you think that the people? It's a justified claim that the people were under stress. Are you basing your opinion on that documentary then?
No. I can separate his opinion, his political position from documentary, which basically, and then I corroborated from different sources. Basically, what happened in Euromaidan included direct violence against Russian speakers. That's just the historical fact. Whether it's propagated all the way to Crimea, I don't know. But I'm just saying that violence against Russian speakers and supporters of basically more pro-Russia way for Ukraine's development, that was a historical fact which was acknowledged by the media. That's all I can say.
This is just a lie. First of all, just one fact. Yes, one fact.
No, because I started the question. We'll go back to it, and I will give you time that you can interrogate them. I just wanted to have a first kind of shot at it. Okay, second, do you think that the referendum in Crimea was legitimate?
Well, according to the Western sources, they basically tried to question it many times, and they said that if you apply all sorts of corrections for possible pressure by the presence of Russian armed forces, etc. Some numbers that I read again from the Western press, they brought down from 97% to 82 or something like this. But they said the fact nevertheless remains that even by most conservative pro-Western estimates, they can say that at least 80% voted for reunification with Russia.
I mean, I don't know how you can legitimize. I mean, it doesn't matter which kind of sources. But I don't understand how you can legitimize a result that is done, received under the gun. Whether you degrade the number or increase it doesn't really matter.
What I'm saying, Western media corrected for possible.
There is no correction. When you have a gun pointing at you, when you have to vote, there is no correction that can possibly, be justified.
I would like to mention also, sorry, just a quick interjection. I would like to mention, let me finish, just one sentence. Russia argued, and that I found that very interesting because I followed what Clinton did in Kosovo with horror. Like Russia argued that this was an exercise of self-determination similar to Kosovo's independence from Serbia. And so that kind of gives you a little bit different angles. Again, I'm trying to be objective here. But
it was a simple question, yes or no question. You don't have to refer to Western media or whatever. Do you agree or not?
Do you agree or not with what exactly?
With Russian claims, which Andrei is mentioning.
I believe.
Don't talk about majority. Just say, do you agree or not?
I agree with that or disagree with the same extent that Kosovo became independent state. It's like you cannot have it.
Nobody asked about Kosovo. Do you agree with Russian claim about Crimea or whatever they're claiming? You don't have to start Russian narratives. Classic.
Russian narrative is a much broader claim. Okay, I disagree with Russian narrative, but specific claim. Like, look, when I was young, I crisscrossed Crimea like for 1 month. We had actually geological practice there, right? So like we were driving like all across. I can tell you one thing, and I was not. My exposure to Crimea was not limited to just seaside resorts where of course you have predominantly Russian population from Moscow, Leningrad, whatnot. I crisscrossed the mountainous parts of Crimea where like more native population lived. I can assure you with absolute honesty that one thing I never heard in Crimea was Ukrainian language.
That's false. That's right. One more thing.
Historical.
Hold on. You'll do it. So here's another thing. I just want to ask you a question. Was the Crimea as an autonomous entity within the Ukrainian borders was ratified by other countries, including Russia?
Yes, it was.
Okay, cool. Now, anything that comes before is irrelevant. Okay, so it's part of the Ukrainian territory. It's subject to Ukrainian constitution. Anything that happens there has to be done in accordance to the rule of law of that land. Was the referendum legitimate according to the Ukrainian constitution?
No, of course not.
Okay, that's it.
I just wanted to add to this, but Andrei, here's my question to you then. And it's not whataboutism of any kind.
No, it's my turn. I would like to give you, we were talking about history a lot of times, and you said you have not met an Ukrainian in Crimea.
I'm not saying they were not Ukrainians, I'm just saying they're very rare.
Wait, I'll tell you why. I'll just tell you why it happened. I'm talking about the Second World War. When Germany invaded Soviet Union, the population of Crimea was about 200,000 people. After that, the Crimean Tatars were deported. The Crimea was actually a mixture of different nations: Greeks, Romanians, Hungarians, Bulgarians, and all of them were deported. And after the war, some of the population were killed by Germans, some of them fled the Crimea. And after the war, the population of Crimea was about 300,000 people. And some villages stopped switching on the microphone. I have not finished yet. I'll let you talk. Let me talk. And
Romsha, if he's not saying anything, please don't react, okay? If he's gonna say something, I will interfere and stop him.
So, many towns and villages were just empty. There were nobody there. And who do you think came to those villages and towns? This is the answer to your question why you have not heard Ukrainian
And yes, about the suppression of Russian-speaking population. Before the Russian invasion in 2014, 95% of schools in Crimea were Russian language schools. There were no Ukrainian language there. And also, you mentioned the people who participated in referendum, right? There were a lot of people who were working in the Russian Black Sea Fleet, and after retirement they settled down in Crimea. And this is another reason for so many Russian-speaking people in Crimea. And yes, this referendum cannot be seen as a legitimate one. It's a direct analogy with German annexation of Austria in what was 36. They came to Austria, invaded Austria, and the next day they made a referendum. You mentioned Kosovo. Yes, it took 10 years to make a decision about Kosovo. The referendum in Crimea was held within a week after invasion, as Andrei truly said on the what was it, Vadim?
I'm sorry.
Can you switch off the mic to make me more comfortable and stop sending those sounds in the room? Okay, so
like in 1 hour I did it once and you're like crucifying me. I mean, come on, Ramsha, don't be so.
No, Snowflake is you, because I ask you politely and you're telling I'm crucifying you?
For God's sake, Ramsha, my phone, my school friend just called me right now. I'm sorry, I immediately muted it, okay? What is your problem? That's the only incident in the past one hour. I mean, what are you talking about?
No problem. I politely
come back to your senses, just relax, okay?
I am completely relaxed. I politely ask you not to switch on the microphone because you making it look like you are going to interrupt me. I'm not interrupting you when you are talking, and now you interrupted me 3 times while I was talking, including the previous take.
That's ridiculous claims, but okay.
No, I finished. Go on, go ahead.
Okay. So I was asked more than one question. I would like to be very short. Okay, so yes, I said that, of course, even with my exposure to Crimea, this exposure was limited. So like I checked the numbers, actually anywhere between like the 1920s and till the collapse of the Soviet Union, the Crimean population, like the ethnic Ukrainians were significant, like more significant than I thought. It was about a quarter, like 25% give or take, okay? So, Tatars World War II or not, but it was like anywhere between 19 and 25, okay. But so I was asked the question, do I believe the results of referendum that the vast majority of, population voted to reunify with Russia? And I said, absolutely, because it just makes sense based on numbers and my observations. Second is my grandma and her relatives were Ukrainians. And I spent most of my childhood in Ukraine, in Kharkiv, just on my school summer vacations. And I know that I was amazed by just how many people in Ukraine, not even in Crimea, like basically they thought of Russian culture and Russian language specifically, very specifically, as their native ones. They associated themselves with the Russian language, Russian culture. Some of them even spoke that, they'd rather not speak Ukrainian. They affiliate themselves with Russian culture, Russian classic literature and whatnot. So I'm just saying, for me, it's very natural based on my observation of facts that the majority of people in in Crimea would definitely vote to reunify. Now, I cannot dismiss history. Like you're saying, well, Andrea said that, yeah, it was a result of a legitimate process. But I would like to point out that this was a legitimate process. Like, let's dig into it a little bit, for God's sake. I mean, we the Americans officially viewed Khrushchev as a dictator. I mean, for us, by definition, the Soviet regime was illegitimate in some fundamental level. We knew that there was no referendum. There was no will of the people whatsoever. And we actually knew that, the gift of Crimea to Ukrainians was because Khrushchev was right-hand henchman of Stalin, and he was there was like lots of blood on his hand, specifically the blood of Ukrainians. And after the Stalin's let me just finish quickly, please.
My apologies. Your point is moot once again, because there was a ratification of the territorial integrity that was done after the fall of the Soviet Union.
And what I'm telling you, Andrei, is
history. I mean, we can go back to, I don't know, Galichina, like the Kiev Rus, whatever you want.
But I don't want to go that far. I'm talking about very recent history.
Polish. We can talk about the Polish invasion of this territory. How many current territories were under Poland? Whether the Poland has any claim to those territories? All of those things are irrelevant. There was a territory that was signed off as a territory of Ukraine, right? And there was a constitutional process that had to be fulfilled in order for that territory to have any sort of referendum. And claiming that there's any legitimacy to the region when you're voting under the gun, I mean, that's just kind of that's a bit insane. I mean, as much as I might disagree with Romsha on other points, I think I'm starting to lean towards his perception.
So Andrei, I all this time I lived in the United States, right? So I can judge mostly by the Western press, but I'm just saying, ironically, Western press, like they said that there may be some kind of pressure, but it's never been mentioned, like from the sources I read in the United States, that it was literally like quote unquote under gunpoint. Again, like I said, the Western media that I read was saying that yes, the numbers were inflated. It was not 97% for sure. It was low 80s if we adjust for any kind of pressure and presence and whatnot. But they said basically, the Western media was unanimous in saying that it was not legitimate. So I agree with you, Andrei. But they're saying that nevertheless the numbers were legitimate, and the whole thing was complicated because of that.
But is it illegitimate because of what press said, or is it because it's objectively?
No, it was illegitimate. It was illegitimate according to the laws. But again, then what would you say about? Okay, Andrea, what would you say? Let me just finish with one question, and I'll shut up. Okay, like it's not. I'm not trying to be like what about that type of person, but still, I cannot. If we want to be consistent in our moral views, like, I mean, what can you say about Clinton bombing the sovereign nation of Yugoslavia, splitting it in multiple states, and basically carving out Kosovo, which all we know is that, it's populated by Muslims, which do what Muslims do. They basically they want separation. They want a caliphate. They basically, persecute gays and women and whatnot. And that's exactly what we observe right now. And that's what we Americans spend our tax dollars and basically our political capital on doing this. And we have no problems with that whatsoever. I mean, what is about
I can explain
Hello, Romsha. I just really quick question. Does that justify, like, your kind of perception of what is going to happen justifies genocide of those people?
Genocide of Ukrainian war. I mean, again,
No. I'm talking about the Kosovo, because Serbians engaged in the
No, I did not. It does not. Absolutely not.
Okay, cool.
Well, first of all, NATO attacked Yugoslavia to stop the war. Would you prefer the bloodshed to continue to this day? I think not. And Russia invaded Ukraine to start the war. There was no war in Ukraine other than on Donbass, which was started by Russia as well.
Romsha, we're specifically deciding, I thought at least that we're right now specifically discussing one political issue, which is...
Then why did you raise the Yugoslavia topic?
Because we're talking about the right of nations, if you follow the discussion, right of nations to self-determination. I'm just saying...
Yes, exactly. Let me explain this. Russian people have a state. So if they have a determination, they take the suitcase and go to Russia. They have a state.
That's not how
Yeah,
it works at all.
they have a state. No, it is exactly how it's done after the annexation of Austria by Germany.
For God's sake, Romsha, Russians lived in Crimea for 200 years.
Yeah, and before you said that Crimea was always
Sorry,
Russian.
Romsha, sorry for a second, but okay, leave Crimea. What about the territories? What calls Donbass? Because do they have a right to
the conversation and you have no idea.
Okay, Romsha, no, you talk a lot. Every time you talk a lot, okay? Just hold on for a second, because I sit here
said
also.
one sentence after you came to the room again.
You said one sentence after another sentence after another, and you will speak a lot today as well.
The speakers were Andre and Vadim. I was trying to say, and Andre asked me to stop, and I stopped. You are lying right now.
Okay, let's stop with the matter. Romsha, finish Sergey. You go after Romsha.
Yeah, thank you. I want to ask Vadim a question. Vadim, could you tell me, please?
I will finish my point.
Sergey, let's continue.
You will finish from the bottom of your heart, Romsha, of course. Just one sentence from me, okay? And after I will listen to you. Yeah, and Soren is here also. That's a great speaker from the Middle East. Vadim, my question, how do you think, does people who live in these territories like Donbass, do they have a right to self-determine themselves, or no?
Sergey, I would like to think that I believe in the right of people to self-determination.
But everywhere, because there is a lot of Russians in Kazakhstan, in many other countries, all of them have the right of the self-determination in the land where they live in different places around the world.
I think, okay, so let me answer your question carefully. I think, in my view, the problem is this. If there's something that the Western media and Western world is very well aware of, which is, there was actual conflicts, actual prosecutions, actual Russian language prosecution, whatnot, on those territories. And I think I think
really?
it's very unfortunate.
Do you have
Let me
any
finish,
documentation to support this?
Let me finish, please. Yes.
Do you have any documentation to support this? Yes or no?
I'm saying that Western propaganda,
So careful. Well
Western propaganda, which is very much pro-Ukraine and anti-Russian, they have to admit there were some screw-ups.
There's no admission of that. And there's
I'm
no
just saying,
documentation.
if there was no such problems, I would say that this right to self-determination is totally illegitimate. Like you asked about Kosovo earlier, and I think, yes, you're right. Romsha, you're right. There was genocide. The situation warranted intervention and probably warranted this right to self-determination. I believe, in other words, in the right of self-determination when the differences are becoming so dramatic, it's so that it leads to direct violence. And I think this point, the two people have to think about whether or not they want to live under the same roof. Otherwise, if you just frivolously decide, I wish just to create like a caliphate in the middle of Russia, and I call it Chechnya caliphate, whatever, that's totally unjustified. In other words, my answer is it depends. And I don't know, for me, it's a gray area. I know that there are some problems in these areas, and there are some grievances by the people. And I wish Ukraine behaved differently so that now Putin would not have those excuses. But unfortunately, I know some people from there, and so the facts are that there was resistance, there was violence, there was shelling by Ukrainian army of Donbass and Zaporizhia territories.
Stop spreading Putin propaganda.
I'm just saying, I know people from there, for God's sake. Oh my God.
I can find you they were not shelling them. First of all, I can find you a lot of videos with Russian troops saying, let's shoot them, and they will shoot back. And for example, Motorola, I can show you the video when he is walking the Donbass and shooting at the sleeping houses with machine guns, grenade launcher under the barrel. I don't remember the proper word for that. So Do you know how many people died on Donbass? It was shelling each other. How many people died from 2014 till 2020?
Okay.
22.
Okay. Let me just answer. Okay. Let me answer this question.
And no, I have not finished yet, and you are interrupting me again. The huge difference between the Crimea and Kosovo is that Kosovo, according to agreement, has no right to join Albania.
Okay, can I answer?
No, you can answer.
Sergio, to answer your question, I am not qualified to make this judgment because in general, I think that there are some circumstances when the rights of nations to self-determination should be evoked, but I cannot tell exactly whether or not the situation in Zaporizhia and Donbass reached the critical point to warrant this decision. So I don't know. The answer is, in theory, it's possible. Whether or not it's justified in this particular case, I know there are different opinions. I don't have this opinion because I don't have sufficient information.
Thank you so much. It's fair. It's fair answer. Romsha, can I ask you the one question?
Wait. I'll add something to Vadim. The whole point of a nation self-determination is getting its own national state country. Like Kurds in Turkey, they want their own country. Russians have their own country. End of story. If you want to for self-determination, go to Russia. This is because next day they will say the Brighton Beach, which is full of Russians, should be Russian, should be join Russia. The whole point of self-determination of nation is getting a sovereign state. Russians have a sovereign state.
Kosovo people had the entire Middle East at their disposal, the entire Arab world, the entire Muslim world. Yours is not a valid argument. People have the right to want to live in their historical land. So again, I'm not arguing for or against Russia. I'm just saying that your whole argument does not stand really. You're saying, oh, they have Russia, let them get the hell out of Crimea. Well, for God's sake, their ancestors lived and died there for like 200 years. I mean,
but Vadim, there is a little bit another controversy because this situation was made synthetically because during the Soviet Union, after Holodomor, they just migrate some people to this land, to Donbass. Russian people were moved to this place synthetically, and that's it. It's not their ancestral land.
Since Vadim is interrupting me all the time, I forgot to say something. You mentioned that Crimea was given to Ukraine in undemocratic way, right? Was Ukraine joined? Did Ukraine join Soviet Union in a democratic way, or any other former 15 republics? Did the Soviet Union was the Soviet Union created some kind of democratic way?
Romsha, actually, it's a very complicated question because Ukraine was under the protection of Russian Empire for hundreds of years, and the historians generally agree that the reason why Ukraine was not swallowed by Rech Pospolita, which is the historical name.
Do you speak English? I was not asking about historians. I was not asking about.
You're asking me to provide a clear-cut question. I'm just saying.
I asked a simple question. Was Ukraine? Did Ukraine become one of the Soviet republics in a democratic way? It's a simple question.
It was
yes or no? Yes or no? Yes or no?
Oh, sure, Romsha, shut up.
No. Now I said, if you keep interrupting me, I'll show how I can interrupt.
It was announced to
be... I want yes or no. Anything else is not an answer to my question.
Well, yes or no? You cannot force me to ask to answer yes, no in the very ambiguous, very complex question.
Was Ukraine, your answer is about the things I did not ask. I just want an answer to a question: was did Ukraine join the Soviet Union?
No, Romsha, hold on for a second.
We have free speech here.
It's a really complicated question. It is a not yes or no question because it's a really complicated question.
Oh.
Because it was a part of revolution. It was
Romsha
many intentions.
Like a clear-cut yes/no guy. I mean, what the hell are you doing here, Romsha?
Yeah, okay, but Romsha, can I ask you one question, Romsha, because I think that I see your weak place.
No, I'm not talking to you.
Yeah. You don't want to answer my questions.
No, because when I answer the questions or I make speeches, you starting to talk about me, not about my arguments. You are starting to talk that I'm
I will talk about your arguments. I will talk about your arguments, my friend. Let me ask you just one question, okay?
Yes.
Do you?
Just for record, I'm not saying that I'll answer it. You can ask it. You are free.
Okay, I'm a free person.
Romsha,
Thank you so much.
I'm sorry.
That's a great conversation. Okay, Romsha, do you admit that some media outlets like BBC can distribute a propaganda? Could you tell?
He's pleading the fifth.
Yeah. It's a tough question for him.
If you want, I can answer your question while watching the dishes.
If you give him immunity from criminal prosecution, the Fifth Amendment will not protect him.
Vadim, I'm answering the question, right? Sergey, which propaganda are you talking about? Propaganda of CNN or American propaganda? We will cover the topic with Vadim.
I understand the distinguish. But my question specifically for you, because I understand your weak place, because you are a left-wing guy. That's why, of course, I know you. That's why I ask you a specific question. Could you tell me, please?
And I want to clarify that question. What propaganda are you talking about? Putin propaganda, American propaganda, West propaganda? Which propaganda are you asking question
I can clarify. Okay. If it's okay, BBC is funding by the government money, if you know it. Yeah. That's why we can talk that it is. Sorry. Don't interrupt me, please. That's why we can talk that this is the British propaganda. Are you agree with me or no?
No. Wait. The Voice of America is financed by American government.
Yeah.
And according to the law, the American government cannot influence what is told in the Voice of America broadcast. I cannot answer your question about BBC because I don't know the matter. But this is how it's done in America, and I'm pretty sure that the same law applies to the BBC. Because, first of all, there is no one unilateral ideology in BBC. Stop talking. I'm answering your question. You wanted me to answer a question. Let me do it. And there is no chance of propaganda because one day it's one political party controlling the government, and next day there is another political party. There is no one unilateral ideology in Great Britain. So there is no base for propaganda to be there.
Okay. But one more question, just in one little example. In 19th of October 23, after October 7, there was an attack on a hospital in Gaza that called Al-Ahli hospital attack. And there was a rocket that was firing, launched from Gaza, from Islamic Jihad, and falling down inside Gaza on this hospital that was a Baptistic hospital. And many media outlets inside the United States just publish the same articles that Israeli rocket attacked the hospital in Gaza at the same moment with the same articles, and it's like they manage from the one place. I don't know why. I ask you, how do you think? Why they do this at the same time with the same articles, and they already know that this is Israeli rocket launching from Israel, attacked the Gaza hospital, but it was absolutely incorrect. Also, they published that there were killed more than 500 people inside this hospital. It was also not true, because after investigation, there were killed about maybe 5 or 7 people, not 500. It was total lie, but they published it from the beginning, from the first minute. I ask you this question: what they did in this moment, or why does it happen?
Hope you appreciate that I was not interrupting you. And we know each other how many? 6 years since 2019.
No.
Don't interrupt me.
From 21. I interrupt you with your.
It was a rhetorical question. Stop interrupting me. I specifically said the first sentence was about not interrupting you, and I hoped that
Jesus
you
Christ, I'm kind of getting sick of this bullshit. Okay, so just get to the point. Stop.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm getting to the point. So, we know each other for many years, and you know that I never discuss anything as you are trying to do this by questioning somebody. If I want something to be said in this room, I say it myself. And it was not question you were talking about. It was a statement. You gave several explanations and so on. And you were trying to lead me to certain answer. So, if you want to do a talk, you talk. I don't answer such questions. You know it after so many years talking to each other.
Get to the fucking point, Ramsha.
I said I will not answer the question.
I made a statement, and only after, I ask you the question based on this statement.
No.
And maybe have better control of your language, because the way you sounded, it was clearly a question. And everybody, I mean, at least me and Sergey understood it as a question. So please make an effort to be more clear in your speech, and then probably you will not be interrupted, dear prima donna Ramsha, okay?
First of all, I'm not obliged to answer any questions, right?
Enough of this bullshit. Okay, let's get back to the topic. What's up, Michael? What do you think about the topic?
I'm not clear exactly where you're trying to go with the conversation. About the propaganda? Like, you're asking who controls it?
No, there was like a sort of like a side topic where we were just talking about the United States involvement in the Ukrainian war efforts and how extensive the support should be. Should it be indefinite? Should it be until a certain point? Should there be a cutoff? Or what are the consequences of it?
Well, it's I'll tell you, it's kind of I'll say a couple things. One, as a general critic, right, like just standing on the sidelines as a New Yorker, looking at American politics and world events, I was very critical of Donald Trump's treatment of Zelensky. I had no problem with him, insulting the man. That's fine. World leaders, they can deal with things however. I had a huge problem with them televising it. I just felt like it was amateur hour. Like, even if you want to yell at the guy, why reveal that to literally the entire world? Like, look, all of Europe quickly got together to give him extra funding, right? So, did that weaken Trump's bargaining position then? Part of the problem with acting like a toddler. Whatever. Regardless. Aside from that, I'm going to step that aside. It is interesting to note and see the world reacting around the crazy man. Right?
Europe, to some degree, maybe Trump lost the bargaining position. Maybe it was a gambit. Maybe he's lost America's say as to how the war is managed, and maybe those mineral rights now go to Europe. Who knows? But maybe not. Little chaos does have a way to push things along. And we should all be honest that this war has been mired. It's been years. The complaints are still there. We don't have a settlement, and people are dying. Little chaos, you know, not the craziest thing to do, even though it is, by definition, crazy.
Oh, I want to ask a question, Sergey, about Israel. After the
we're not talking about Israel right now. Maybe next
Well, actually, I was gonna pull it back around to Israel a little bit.
He can do this. He can do that.
Yeah, no. Let me finish. All right. In terms of the propaganda, right, we were referencing the BBC as to how that is a representation of the British people, by which we mean what they have agreed by law and custom to be the unified voice of the British people under literally the crown of the king, right? So they have that. That is the official voice of Britain. America is a different animal. It's not Germany, it's not France, it's not Spain, it's not Chile, it's not Brazil. It's the federation of the 50 anglicized states of the Americas. And to some degree, they are the masters of propaganda. Some people say it was the Nazis. I say they're wrong. I think that Freud was a big deal, but the real masters in the end became Wall Street. Not Wall Street, really was more Madison Avenue. Like all the Freudian guys, they went into marketing. And they are the masters of brainwashing. Plus, we've got Hollywood. Plus, we had a vested interest in communicating across the ocean to our ancestors, relatives, and the other people that spoke English. There was a natural pull for humanity and America to develop this media monster, but we are not Britain. Right? We don't have a unified voice. We kind of proudly don't, because this was entrepreneurial and wild in its inception. So we have codified rights for like immigrant populations to have private newspapers. That was one of the early problems with communists. Every time we would bring in these immigrants from some struggling nation, they would have a newspaper that they would publish in their own language to communicate with the other people in America that spoke that language. And there were always private clubs. All of America, right? People come here, they learn English. They don't lose their language. They don't lose their culture. They find those people, they join them, and they start publishing and creating public interest groups and growing politically. Because in America, you're able to rise up this way. Whereas in the old world, it's simply the people you know. They know everyone on that continent, and they're certain whether or not you should have power. Right? America's different. And our media also functions that way. It is a Wild West. It is a laboratory of ideology. Right? The marketplace of ideas is what we call it.
Which ideology? Tell me, which ideology they transmit?
Okay, exactly. That's what I'm trying to stop you on, because I could tell you thought that there was a unified American ideology, and to some degree, you're right. There is an American like.
I didn't say.
Okay, I know you didn't say it. Relax. I'm in the middle of what I'm saying. You interrupted me, right? Okay, America has they have a lot of different voices, but they publish all of them. The American approach is to give voice to everyone, because A, we invented the technology for people to communicate, right? Newspapers, free speech, that wasn't allowed in the other places. You couldn't say what the government said not. We were the ones that said, I don't care if you say I can't print it. I know how printers work. So this is America, and we're very proud to publish everything. We are very careful when we say,
sorry, it's impossible. Could you lend, please, your point, because it's impossible.
All right, I'm sorry. When it comes to the question as to how the American media was led so quickly to believe that the hospital was struck by Israel, to some degree the answer is capitalism. They were pushing to get the best answer out quickly to compete against the other publishers. So they get inaccuracy in a different way from the BBC. The BBC might decide and massage what their message is and publish it out there. But in capitalism, we compete. And that means that, especially in war, you get what's called the fog of war, where misinformation is freely transmitted. And the truth is, the big problem is, the reason why everyone fell for it and rolled with it, is we haven't had good war correspondence. Not like back in the day when like everyone cared and it mattered, Vietnam, World War I, World War II. We're a little out of practice, and it really is an experiential thing. People need to get into it and know when to be like, okay, who are the players? Where do we trust people? Where do we mistrust people? And that takes time. And like you said, it was even in 23. It was before the end of the first few months of the war. And there was a lot of confusion. And reporting was coming out, and the Palestinians were quick and numerous in calling out whatever it is they were told to say had happened. So you get 2 billion, like at a certain point, the reporting, if I'm reporting on news, it's not really a question as to what happened in reality. News is what people are talking about. If 2 billion Muslims all say Israel struck a hospital with a missile, regardless of the truth, you report that. And I hope that helps.
I agree, Sergey. I would give the same answer to a question, but that is totally right. Andre, I would like to. You are making such a good points about the Russian claims regarding the Crimea. Can we get back to that? You were asking if Vladimir.
But you wanted to ask me a question about Israel. Go ahead first.
Okay. It's a very simple and short question, and it's related to Ukraine. After the 7th of October, United States sent, if I am correct, 2 aircraft carriers, right? Am I correct? It's the first part of question. They sent 2 авианосца, блин.
Yes.
2 aircraft carriers.
That's true. They repositioned that.
Sergey, am I correct?
There was an sea, yeah. Yeah.
How many minerals Israel gave to United States for that help?
That wasn't help because they didn't use it. It the first, and also Biden.
Okay.
Biden, withdrew
I'm satisfied.
two USS from the Black Sea before Russian invasion. That is the answer for your question.
I see. I'm satisfied.
Israel pays for its support.
Israel pay a lot, but this is the fake what you are talking about now, because as I understand, the deal for the previous things were not in a part of on a table. That wasn't the part of the deal.
Let me, it's just...
Ты ебанутый или ты что-то несешь?
Я твое... Let me speak for myself, повторяю.
Как клоун ведешь.
Ну, я повторяю твои действия.
Okay, it wasn't part of the table, okay? It wasn't part of this deal. That's okay for you?
So you were mocking my English and I cannot mock you?
Okay, you can do this. But, Romsho, answer me please. Answer me please. Yes. You bring to this conversation just a fake. It wasn't part of this deal. The fake that they propose to make the part of the deal to pay for the previous what they sent to Ukraine, okay? For the previous deals. It was a fake. We didn't see it. Now, when these articles come to, I can send you a couple of articles, and you can see.
So just to clarify what you're talking about, are you talking about the mineral deals with Ukraine during the Biden administration?
Yes. No, I was talking about that Trump demanded Ukraine to give United States $500 billion worth of minerals, and I was trying to find out if it applies to everybody, every country which United States help. If the law is equal
it's
for
not
everybody.
necessary. It's not necessary to apply to every country the United States helps. The United States, first and foremost, is going to pursue its national interest. So if there is a country which could, repay United States not in the strategic positioning or in some other way in the diplomatic support, or could do it with natural resources, then I would expect the United States to exploit that possibility because it's pursuing its own interests, rightfully so.
And exactly what interest is that?
It is a fake.
So right.
We're gonna switch to Israel right now. I mean, what's the point? I mean, this is like,
I mean, we're talking about Ukraine. We're talking about the Ukraine deal with the mineral resources. So the way I understand it is that the United States' primary target at the moment is China. It's engaged in a tariff war with China. One of the advantages that China might have over the United States is those specific type of resources that are on the table in the agreement with Ukraine. So it's graphite, lithium, beryllium, uranium. There's a couple other ones that carry very high strategic importance for United States. And so it was a very natural move for the United States to create some sort of deal that will allow them access to those resources and which would support them in their tariff war against China.
You must understand that he talking about the $500 billion. That was a fake. That America just asked Ukraine to pay for the previous bills. It was a fake. $500 billion. It was a fake, and Rome should just bring the fakes to our conversation.
Oh, interesting. Can you post it because I'm completely unaware of this? Would you please post something?
What is the fake? What are you talking about?
You're talking about the previous bills that Trump asked Ukraine to pay via all of these resources for the previous bills. That's it. It was a fake. If you can provide the link, we can read it.
And what is the amount of the current mineral agreement?
Why are you asking about amount? It is a concession. It is a concession agreement. There is no amount. Amount was a fake. That's what I answer you.
Of course, it's estimate because those resources are not really how it's called developed, and nobody knows how much is there. But do you really need to say something like that while I'm talking?
Бля, как ты заебал на форум реагировать, какой-то придурок.
Here are prima donna.
Sergey,
Okay, guys, this is an English speaking. Let's not do this.
I can do the same to you, Sergey.
He just react every time on the rhetoric. He not react on the facts.
I'm asking politely not to do it because it doesn't help me to talk. I'm asking politely. I'm not sure.
Don't try to teach me, Romsha. I'm not your wife. Okay?
I'm not.
Try to listen.
Let me repeat the question. I ask, do you have to say it? You can say it without switching on the mic.
Can you prove your fake?
Answer my question, please.
Prove your fake.
Do you have to?
You bring fake first. Then I ask you the question, and after I will accept your question.
Okay, so Sergey, the claim is that Trump asked for a payback of a large sum of money through resources. I mean, I'm just not quite getting what you guys have been talking about. And that's why I'm asking, like, either of you to provide a link to anything that discusses this issue. So I have no clue what you're talking
about. First of all, Trump claimed that Ukraine received $350 billion worth of help, which was a lie. The amount that United States, it was 120, and Ukraine even did not get the money. Actually, the money went to American military-industrial complex because United States supplied to Ukraine the weapons which mostly excluding like HIMARS or whatever, the old weapons, and after supplying it from the American stocks, they placed the orders for building new ones. So actually they were paying to themselves.
Okay, so just to clarify what actually happened. So you're right. From what I understand, the United States gave, I mean, there are different numbers that I saw circulating, anywhere from like 120 to 178 billion dollars in terms of aid, both physical and monetary. And a portion of that money, for sure, did actually go to the United States contractors. And you're correct saying that, you know, that there was sort of exchange, meaning the not outdated, but, you know, like the previous generation of the United States weaponry was sent to Ukraine, while they were able to restock their own stockpiles with newer weapons. So you're basically killing two birds with the same stone. You're providing, you know, the needed military aid to Ukraine, and allows them to, you know, to hold off against Russia. And at the same time, you're updating your own stockpile. Okay, so what's the problem?
The problem is that, well, those supplies, agreements to supply all those equipment and weapons were signed. There were no question of paying for it, like with minerals and anything else. Well, some grants, some, as Trump said, we gave just money and Europa is going to get paid back, which was not true. And he said the amount of all those help was about $350 billion, and now we have to have Ukrainian minerals. First of all, you don't talk to a fighting country like that. It's just obnoxious. And Trump himself is a draft dodger, and he was talking to a president of the country which is waging war for 3 years. He was talking to him like to some kind of kid. And everybody is outraged right now by the behavior of Trump and his vice president Vance.
Not everybody, many.
How it starts?
Well,
Tell us how it starts.
Well, in this case, Vadim, I feel sorry for you because remembering the Second World War and United States helping Soviet Union, which actually was an enemy of United States, and nobody ever talked to a president of a country which is under attack, which is trying to defend itself in such a derogatory way. It's a disgrace. They were. It felt like Zelensky was not talking to Trump. It was like he was talking to Putin. And if you imagine this situation like Zelensky was talking to Putin, exactly the words. You have no cards. Give up. Capitulate.
Did you see the conversation? Did you see this conversation?
Yes, darling. I saw it.
Oh, I'm not your darling. No, and you are not darling for me.
Okay.
You're like Vadim said, you're a prima donna in this room.
Yes.
I can play this video first 2 minutes. Not first 2 minutes,
No.
but when these all three people in the camera, JD Vance, Trump, and Zelensky, and I can just start play these 2 minutes for your understanding how it happened. Okay. Just one.
Okay, so it's true that the agreement between there's no agreement that requires Ukraine to repay the U.S. military aid by the form in which the aid is given to Ukraine are grants, and there's no obligation to pay those things. From what I understand, this is actually an interesting question whether the Trump can kind of go back to those agreements and say, well, listen, the aid that we're giving you is
Did you know for trading places, Eddie Murphy stated that the making of
Middle pillar.
And tit for tat sort of paid for it. I mean, I don't know. So, but that's an interesting question.
That's the whole thing. Roast. Technically, just like this room, you're fucking Zelensky. I'm Trump and Vance. I'm here to make fun of you, to make sure that you're angry, to make sure that you're a loser who can't control his emotions, to make sure you have pain in your left testicle, pain in your right shoulder, to know that you are not in control of it. This is not an Islamic court, Rabbi. You don't stand a fucking...
behaved in the most diplomatic manner.
Right.
There is, on one view, interview have mentioned that Zelensky was also unnecessarily interruptive and agitated. To me personally, the moment when I felt that everything went south was completely unprovoked and unforced error on Zelensky's part. He, for no apparent reason, brings Europe into the conversation, how much Europe has helped Ukraine, which seems to set off that whole
certainly there is a consent
avalanche from J.D. Vance.
Well.
You know, Trump is actually seems to attempt to somehow mediate the tension in the room, but then he joins in, and then it becomes a complete quagmire because Zelensky is on, like a independent. He keeps pushing. To me, my general view of this whole situation is it's a complete failure of Ukrainian foreign diplomacy. I think the people who are responsible and advising Zelensky all need to be fired immediately. He needs to completely get new recruits who have actually experience in dealing with foreign leaders. I mean, I think there are plenty of people on the ground in Ukrainian embassies who've been there for a while who know what's going on. I think the people who are advising him from from offices in Ukraine, so have very little knowledge or understanding of what's actually going on and how to navigate.
Zelensky needs to fire himself, you
He's
loser.
not very experienced, so I claim incompetence on his part and lack of ability to hold his emotions at bay, which is also to a certain extent understandable because he is a wartime president and he is under a lot of stress. The thing that seems to me very kind of add to my perception of complete incompetence on the part of Zelensky is also that he walks into those blunders repeatedly. And it's the same flavor of blunders. I mean, he in the...
That was nice.
You're welcome. Yeah.
I love Sade.
Me too. I listened to Sade in a period, I had a phase in my life.
Where Measy at?
I don't know.
I would say that's a hormone problem. Why did you say that?
No, that can't be true because you just described women.
No, but look at how we fucking up the planet. That's why this shit is happening. Like, do you understand what we put in the fucking...
And we don't even have to bring in science.
Between you and your fart boy, Tim. Okay. You see how it is, Chili? You can have
And the result of the pig war was Heron Island became part of the U.S. just south of Vancouver. And both countries sent their full military force at a huge standoff on San Juan. And at the time, there was one farmer and a bunch of pigs, and no one else lived there. I think that Dave is reliving the history of his country to be, America and its feuds.
It will be the first your time that you will listen it, from the beginning to the end.
I was speaking. Don't interrupt me.
Listen, 2 minutes.
Okay,
You need,
just to put everything in perspective.
yeah, you need to be educated also.
I think
You need to be educated. That's how it starts.
Sergio, is it from the meeting?
Yeah. It's from the meeting. Yeah.
For 4 years in the United States of America, we had a president who stood up at press conferences and talked tough about Vladimir Putin, and then Putin invaded Ukraine and destroyed a significant chunk of the country. The path to peace and the path to prosperity is maybe engaging in diplomacy. We tried the pathway of Joe Biden of thumping our chest and pretending that the president of the United States' words mattered more than the president of the United States' actions. What makes America a good country is America engaging in diplomacy. That's what President Trump is doing. Can I ask you?
That was the first part. Do you have a question to J.D. Vance to this speech?
Probably was the question about clauses, as I remember.
The clause, it was the journalist. It wasn't J.D. Vance or Trump.
Yeah.
But why do you bring it to this conversation?
I let you broadcast
what you let me.
You wanted.
What you let me. It is the conversation between the three people.
Your question. Let me answer your question. Stop talking.
Okay.
I'm asking politely.
Asking? What are you asking?
Let me answer your question.
Please.
Do you understand English?
Yes, from your heart, I understand.
Let me speak from my heart.
Okay. Stop this.
Okay, I will stop answering Sergey's question. I don't like this
certain people I meet
type of style of conversation.
Yeah, I got it.
Хорошо, чувак, я тебе там буду перебивать на каждое слово, точно так же, как ты делаешь.
Somehow I knew you were like fitness, and everyone out there seems to be away with it. Even Danielle seems like she's
typical
body today.
Okay, let's move forward.
To be on the show. Oh, you're an interesting
Speaking, begin about my being a lefty. I said it in the first place. This is what will be the end of conversation now.
Someday I'll see you again.
Okay, because you can't answer my questions. Because I show you how it starts, but you tell me that some journalist from another side, he just asked a question about clothes, but
of course I cannot answer the question because after the first two words you start to interrupt me and you do not let me answer the questions. How can I answer if you are